Yes. Sure. Okay.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Young Turks. Anna Kasparian and John Iderola with you.
That's the Anna you are.
Yeah, like Anna Kasparian. Not to be mistaken with the other Annas that work here, which are none. There are none. Anyway, John, how are you doing?
I'm good. I just came from doing Larry King. I was on with the chief editor of Breitbart.
That sounds like a great time, John.
He's very reasonable on that show.
Okay, well...
He doesn't say anything crazy, really. I disagree with him on everything, but he doesn't say anything
Where
crazy.
can people see that interview?
I think on Larry King's website, I'm assuming tomorrow.
Okay, yeah, definitely tomorrow, because right now you gotta watch this show.
Exactly, don't go anywhere.
Yeah, exactly. All right, in the second hour, Brett Ehrlich will join in, and at some point, possibly Jake will come in because he said that he wants to sit in JR's seat and comment on some of these stories.
JR's not in it.
Yeah, we don't
know.
We don't know for sure if Jake is going to join. He is busy doing CEO duties, but that's okay because I'm excited to do the show with you, John.
And I'm willing to do it with you. It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Okay. All right, so let's get started. Unfortunately, we start off with some pretty bad news that broke over the weekend. A gunman opened fire at a video game tournament in Jacksonville, Florida, killing two, later killing himself. Unfortunately, aside from those who were murdered, 11 were injured and 9 were injured by gunfire. To give you some more details into the story, police have identified the attacker. They've identified him as David Katz, a 24-year-old from Baltimore. Now, Jacksonville Sheriff Mike Williams added that he did not know what motivated the shooting or whether Katz knew the victims that were targeted or whether the victims were even targeted specifically in the first place. So the story is still developing. Authorities are really holding on to whatever details. They're not releasing them to the public quite yet. But investigative journalists have done a pretty decent job so far in looking into the history of the shooter and trying to figure out, who he is, why he possibly did this. The Associated Press obtained some documents indicating that he had been hospitalized in the past for mental health illnesses and that his parents disagreed deeply over how to take care of those mental health illnesses. Now, we don't know specifically what those illnesses are, so I don't want to speculate on that. The attacker died from a gunshot wound to the head, and that's according to the medical examiner. 6 shooting victims described as males in their mid-20s were treated at the University of Florida College of Medicine in Jacksonville, and also 4 were struck in their torsos, while the other 2 were shot in the extremities. 1 victim is in serious condition, but luckily all of them are expected to survive. So, John, I want you to jump in because this was a video game tournament for Madden, which is an NFL game. This was the first part of the tournament, meaning, this was the qualifier. And there are some witnesses saying that the shooter competed, lost, then he left, grabbed his gun, and came back. That's what some of the witnesses are saying. So I want to be clear about that.
Yeah, I don't know for sure. The police, I think, in this case, are being responsible and not saying that they know for sure what the motive is. And at this point, I would say I don't really care. I mean, whether he had lost and then came back or whatever, there's no logical connection between losing and shooting up the place anyway.
Right. So
whether that's the thing that set him off or not, it's not actually the reason he did it. It's something else, something more fundamental. But it's awful in any event. I mean, esports is exploding. You have these huge gatherings, and people go there because they all share a hobby, basically, and they want to be enthusiastic about it and pursue that. And like with every other mass shooting, no one should have to deal with this sort of thing. I've seen details on the 2 who were killed. We talked about them on the damage report this morning. And, their friends and families, even though the police at this point, perhaps they have now, they hadn't actually identified for sure the 2 who had died. But family and friends of those 2 have spread their pictures and information about their lives. One had a family, like a wife and a kid at that point. And so just, obviously, tragedy.
So as you know, this is one of many shootings that have happened in the state of Florida recently. And the governor of Florida, Rick Scott, was asked to comment on the shooting. And so during a press conference, he said the following: the first thing people are going to do is this political fight. But let's look at this. This young man and other young men, they're not valuing life. Something is causing that. As a society, we've got to figure this out. Every parent has got to say to themselves, what can I do better? So essentially putting the onus on parents here. So, look, we have a problem in the country. I feel like we, as a nation, as a political party, as progressives, like we've become a broken record. There's another mass shooting, more people die, we have the same conversation over and over and over again.
We even have that part of the conversation over and over
again, right? Because here's the fact of the matter. First off, Republicans, they're not going to do anything about gun control. They're just not. We have a corrupt political system. They're getting funded by weapons manufacturers. They're getting their support from the NRA. They're not going to do anything about gun control. We know that. We're going to have the exact same conversation a few weeks from now, if not a month from now. We're going to have that conversation again soon, okay? So you as the voter, what are we going to do? Because we need to really reform politics in the country if you genuinely want to do something about this. I've been clear about my views on guns and gun control. I don't believe in banning guns. I do believe in the Second Amendment. But I get painted as an extremist or a radical when it comes to gun control because people have bought into this idea that it's a black or white issue. Either you have guns or you don't. But what we have right now is not a common sense system where you have an individual with mental health issues getting his hands on guns. Like, it just should not happen.
In this case, it should be pretty simple because they have said for a long time the problem is people with mental health issues. So in this case, clearly this is a reminder that we need to do something about that,
but
right?
But they don't do anything about mental health issues.
That does hurt. That hurts it.
So Republicans are not only disingenuous when they point to, mental health problems or video games as the real issue behind these mass shootings, they also don't really do anything about it after mentioning those things as scapegoats, right? Then are you going to fund mental health programs?
No, they can't.
Of course they're not.
Yeah, and just to go through a couple of those, we should have a segment, we have the same conversation every time. Dana Loesch goes on the NRA and says it's safe spaces that do it. Another guy on the NRA said that it was headphones that caused it. Having headphones that block the noise of gunfire is dangerous, and thus you probably shouldn't wear them. So maybe we'll get some sort of headphone control if we can't get gun control. The Republicans might, since their primaries tomorrow, they might pretend for 24 hours that they actually care about this. It'll probably dissipate shortly after that. And we should probably also, while I hate having to talk about politics in connection with either this set of killings or with Molly Tibbetts, at the time we said, well, it's a little bit weird that you're immediately politicizing this when you always say don't politicize the mass shootings, and maybe at that point they might have said, oh, that's ancient history. Well, it's coming up and you're doing it again. I mean, Rick Scott, you just saw there, was saying don't politicize this. And again, what happens? Does Donald Trump talking about it? Well, it's dependent on his race. Turns out he's white, so of course the president doesn't talk about it, and that's why it shouldn't be politicized. But you can guarantee that if it was someone else of some other race that had shot up the same exact tournament, Rick Scott would not be saying we're in a rush to politicize it. If you've watched the show for a while, Anna said these same things, I have said these same things, we will tragically, unfortunately, have to say them again.
Right. The way that things work in this country right now indicate that this type of shooting will happen again in the future. And it'll happen again in the near future. So while it's our duty to report on this story and tell you about it and give you our thoughts on it, just understand that this is a conversation that we'll be having again in another week. If not in another week, maybe in another month. I mean, mass shootings really do happen every day in the country. We just don't hear about all of them. Because
over 250 this year.
Exactly. So we would be doing nothing other than reporting on mass shootings if we were to only focus on that one topic. And it's devastating. And it makes me feel so helpless.
Yeah, and if it was the same exact things, but they were actually labeled as terror attacks, and they were happening this often. They happened at a concert, then they happened at a concert outside of a casino, and then they happened at a gaming thing, and then all of that. Do we have any doubt that people would demand some sort of change then? I mean, what would people not be willing to give up or change or radically alter to do it if they thought that this was a string of connected terror attacks? But if it's unconnected by anything other than our obsession with guns and our apparent worship of violence in this country, we don't do anything. We don't care. Because it's seems disconnected. It's just a whole bunch of crazy white people.
Well,
they are connected, obviously, since it doesn't happen elsewhere.
It doesn't, not in this way, not with this much frequency. By the way, Republican candidates in the state of Florida have canceled their campaign events in Jacksonville following the shooting. So you might think, oh, that's the honorable thing to do. They're doing this out of respect for the victims. No, they're doing this because they don't want to answer any questions about gun legislation, which could hurt them politically in a state like Florida, which, by the way, happens to be the only state in the country, as far as I know, that has actually increased its support for Trump. Go Florida. So Republican candidates are canceling their campaign events in Jacksonville. Just to give you some specifics, Republican candidates for governor, Adam Putnam and Ron DeSantis, announced their events in Jacksonville had been canceled. And what are they offering to the victims of these shootings? You guessed it, thoughts and prayers. So Adam Putnam said, "Our prayers continue to be with the victims and their families. Please cooperate with local law enforcement and do not hesitate to be helpful in your community in any way you can." Yeah, if you're running for governor and the only thing you can offer are thoughts and prayers, then you're not a leader. You're just like everyone else. Also, Ron DeSantis said, due to today's tragic shooting in Jacksonville, the previously scheduled DeSantis campaign stop for tomorrow in Jacksonville will be canceled. Well, it has been canceled. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families and the entire Jacksonville community at this time. I mean, it's amazing.
I would like to ask for, I believe, the least change possible. Just to pretend like you care. I'm not saying you have to do anything more than thoughts and prayers, but at least call it something else. Say our prayers and our deepest thoughts are with you. At least word it differently. It's almost like they're mocking us at this point, that they continue to use that cliched phrase that they know they're going to be attacked for, but they feel some sort of obligation. It's like they have some sort of contract with the NRA, that for the next 2 years I have to say thoughts and prayers. I can't possibly say, we're really thinking about you and we feel great compassion for your suffering. They literally can't word it in any other way.
Well, you know what? Who knows? Maybe thoughts and prayers would help. I'm going to show you what the scene was like when the shooting took place. We're not going to show you people getting shot. You're going to hear what it sounded like. And let's see if thoughts and prayers would help these victims out.
It's a lot. It's going to be hard to come on screen. It's not a tough out today. It's not an easy out.
Yeah, it turns out that the previous thoughts and prayers that our politicians had doled out in past shootings, didn't seem to help these victims out in this case. It's so pathetic. They're supposed to be leaders. They're supposed to be individuals who make difficult decisions to represent us and protect us. That is literally the only role of government, to protect its citizens. That's it. And they fail to do it time and time again. It's pathetic.
I had not actually listened to that before. That is rough. And I mean, the idea that if we have a problem and we're going to try to fix it, like, the only things that Republicans are willing to talk about are solutions that would begin 1 to 2 seconds into that videotape. We're not going to do anything to stop him from having the gun. He's in the room. He wants to kill you. What could we do? Maybe the people playing Madden have guns. Maybe there's cops all over the place. Those are the only potential solutions. When every rational person watching that knows that the solution to that problem was that he didn't have a gun in the first place. And we just have to ask ourselves, what are we willing to do to ensure that people like that, either with mental health problems or a predisposition towards violence or God only knows what, don't have guns if they don't need to have guns? So far, we're willing to do absolutely nothing.
Yeah, we're
absolutely
not going to do anything.
But Republicans have been willing to cede all of the ground between him going and buying the gun to him pointing at someone in a video game tournament. And then they're willing to talk about, hey, maybe we could have someone else shooting at him. Because a lot of people could listen to that tape and think there weren't enough guns firing then. That's the solution. A crossfire. That's the solution to all of our problems of mass violence in America.
Yeah. Well, we're going to go to break, and maybe during that break, our supervising producer can brief us on the next mass shooting that we'll report on. But we'll be right back with more news.
We get animated about this. Yes, we're not the robots on our TV. I actually care about the news. Guilty, I care. Senator Sanders, I'm going to do something unusual. I'm going to ask you a policy question. How dare you? That's the problem. You're the problem. Don't ever attack the Republicans. Wait up. He's the liberal. No. These are all establishment guys. They love the system as it is. They're all enormously rich off the system that exists. For us, this system isn't working. So what this campaign is about is trying to create an economy that works not only for the people on top, but works for all of us.
So what's happening in the Democratic Party is what used to happen in the general election. We would have a person who represented workers and the people and the voters, and then the Republicans would represent business, corporations, and Wall Street. That's happening all inside the Democratic Party this time.
We're going to rock the boat. We're going to be counter-establishment. We're going to tell people the truth to the best of our abilities, and we're going to keep it real with them.
Corey, did you hear the news? Yeah. You know what we have to do, right? Let's do it. And I wouldn't lose any votes, okay? Like incredible.
Hey, bud, you still there? Yeah, I had the dream again. Yeah. I was in the rain this time. It was pretty cute.
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Damage Report, another week of the news. I am John Idarola, and we've got a doozy of a show for you. My God, is DC up its own ass today. We have put someone into power in our country who is so crazy they have finally out-crazied North Korea.
The U.S. is the only country in the world that is a part of the Paris Climate Accord.
Yesterday, Donald Trump did exactly what he told us. He pulled the U.S. out of the Iran nuclear accords.
People call the police on black people. People are fearful of black humans. There is no more to the story than racism.
I was going to say we've been dealing with the issue of lead poisoning in this country, but that would imply that we're really doing something. We have an issue with lead poisoning, and it continues. So 60 people are now dead. Some of them grandmothers, many of them children. The silence of politicians on both sides of the aisle. Just about only Bernie Sanders, maybe Tulsi Gabbard, and a few others have actually been critical of what happened there. And the rest are cowards hiding behind silence, refusing to admit what happened yesterday.
We have to be able to accept that we do things wrong in this country. You can fix and change things, make things even.
What's great about our country, and this is a great example of it, is everybody's pissed off. It is the Damage Report, and it's all about the threats facing us each day. When something's relevant, and it's hot, and it's in the news, you're not supposed to talk about it. We start talking about that.
Alright, everybody, good afternoon. Let's answer some questions truthfully for a change.
Why must you criticize in such personal terms?
Because he is a dick. Here's a list of what the president watches every day. Cartoons, Fox and Friends cartoons.
You said President takes the issue of violence against women seriously.
Yes, but in my defense, that was a joke. To keep women safe, we've made a strict policy of hiring very few of them. You want the truth? You probably can't handle the truth.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to TYT. Anna and John with you. Before I read some TYT Lives, I just wanted to just remind you guys about a show on our network called We the People, which is hosted by the wonderful and lovely Nina Turner. If you're interested in checking it out, do it the way I do it. I love listening to podcasts and audio. You can listen to it on the go. I'm in my car. I'm driving. You go to tyt.com/audio. No, I love podcasts, though.
I do too. I listen to a lot of them.
I'm like obsessed with podcasts. I podcast everything.
What's your favorite podcast?
My
Other
favorite?
than We the People.
Oh, what's my favorite podcast? Well, obviously No Filter with Anna Kasparian.
You listen to your own podcast?
No, I don't. Actually, I do for quality control. But anyway, no, I really, I don't know if I'm supposed to be promoting this because it's not on our network, but I really like The Daily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, with Michael Barbaro, who speaks very slowly and does a lot of that. But it's a good way of kind of understanding the inner workings of big news stories. So I really enjoy that. But I also listen to Nina Turner's podcast, We the People. I listen to your show, Damage Report.
Oh, thank you.
Which is fantastic.
And now available as a podcast.
It is, yes. So make sure you guys check it out. It's really good stuff.
Yeah, we had, it'll probably be up not too long after today's show was great. We had Brooke Thomas on and also a congressional candidate who's likely to become the first Muslim woman congresswoman, Rashida Tlaib, was on the show today.
And you've interviewed a lot of fascinating people.
We've had great guests.
Yeah, definitely. All right, want to read some TYT Lives for you now? Gabby Marita says, can we take the whole safe space narrative back from conservatives? Like, is there something wrong with expecting the places I go to be safe? Yeah, it's funny because they want their own safe spaces, right? Which I've talked about on No Filter. I won't get into it now, just to save time. Tom Zawacki says, people in Florida are afraid of alligators, sharks, red tide, and sinkholes. All of them combined don't account for a fraction of the homicides created through the lax gun laws and the refusal to accept Medicaid funds. Oh, so true.
Oh, that especially, yeah.
To cover people properly. Such a great point.
Just super fast. But, I mean, this happens all the time. But a woman was walking her dog in Florida last week, and an alligator was threatening her dog. And so she, tried to scare off the alligator, and the alligator dragged her in the water.
No. I know. Please don't repeat that story. I saw it, and it was horrible.
That is just terrible.
Okay, Foresto.
The dog lived.
Yeah.
I mean, that's who she was trying to protect. That's tough.
Thanks for bringing that up today.
This is Florida.
It's a great day.
This is what Florida's like.
Foresto Vintero on TYT Super Chat, thank you for helping the show, asked a question. I actually am not familiar with this controversy. Any response to the Donna Brazil tweet controversy? Do you know about this?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Can we find it?
Yeah, we'll look into it during the break. I'm totally aware of
the person
I can probably guess.
I learned from him on the board and off the board.
Maybe it was about the reforms this weekend?
Team member.
I'm not sure. I don't think I
don't want to speculate. We'll get briefed on that during the next break, and maybe I'll come up with an opinion by then. But I honestly haven't come across that story.
I prefer to predict. No, I don't know.
Or speculate. Okay. Moving on to some other news. The family members of an Iowa college student by the name of Molly Tibbetts, the woman who was tragically murdered, the family members are coming out and speaking out against how her death has been politicized by the right wing. Now, she was allegedly murdered by a man named Christian Rivera, and there is still some uncertainty as to whether or not he's in the country legally or illegally, but what we do know is that he is a Mexican individual in the country. There is some possibility that he's here illegally. And so the Trump administration, along with other right-wing pundits, have exploited this tragedy in order to make a statement about immigration into the United States. And Molly Tibbetts' family is not happy about that. Before we get to their statements, I want to give you a sense of what Trump has said in the past to politicize this tragedy. Take a look.
The illegal alien coming in very sadly from Mexico, and you saw what happened to that incredible, beautiful young woman. Should have never happened. Illegally in our country. We've had a huge impact, but the laws are so bad.
So Trump has done this in the past, where he has taken family members of victims who were killed by undocumented immigrants and has paraded them around in an effort to spread anecdotal evidence, propaganda about how we need to squash any and all immigration from Mexico or Central American countries into the United States. But Molly Tibbetts' family is not having it, and I actually give them a lot of credit because their statements are strong and, in this political climate, very courageous, because anyone who speaks out against Trump and his cronies gets attacked immediately. But they seem to be brave enough to come forward and say, no, you're not going to exploit, Molly's death for your political narrative. So one of Molly's family members, this is actually Molly's cousin, Sandy Tibbetts Murphy, says, especially for those of you who did not know her in life, you do not get to usurp Molly and her legacy for your racist, false narrative now that she is no longer with us. We hereby reclaim our Molly. She continues to say, Molly was killed, and a man has been arrested and charged with her murder. Yes, that man is an immigrant to this country with uncertainty as to his legal status. But it matters not. He is a man whose path in life crossed that of Molly's life with tragic results.
Yeah. I mean, we've seen a lot of things get politicized in this country in a fairly unsubtle way. This is about as unsubtle as it gets. They're gleeful. They're gleeful over this situation. Trump held it in better than some, but some of the pundits on the right, they can't get over themselves how happy they are about this. And we know, has anyone presented any evidence that the violence was because he was an undocumented immigrant? Does it have anything directly to do with what he did? Not that we've seen. We haven't seen anything about that. And really, if we were a rational country, the conversation that we would have right now, if you wanted to bring up the fact that he's undocumented, would go like this. So, news is apparently an undocumented immigrant killed her. We don't actually know for sure, but let's say that it is. Oh, wow, that's scary. You think we should do something about it? Okay, well, do they commit crimes more than regular people? Because that would be, maybe then we should do something about it. Oh, both undocumented and documented immigrants commit crimes at lower rates than native-born citizens? Oh, well, then it's probably not a gigantic problem. This is a tragic thing that happened here, but it's not some sort of systemic problem across the country. Yeah. And they don't care about that. And the fact that they don't care about those stats show that they don't actually care about the crime. They don't actually think this will be a solution to crime. They care about the image of it, the theme of it, what it stands in for socially, and especially coming so soon after bad news for Donald Trump. They're going to salivate over that.
What's devastating about it is that this type of propaganda is effective. It really is. Because, if you're right, if you look at the broader picture, if you put anecdotal evidence aside, which is worthless, by the way, and you look at actual trends, you will notice, first off, if you're concerned about saving lives, maybe look into how lax gun laws lead to more mass shootings and more deaths, okay? Because that's a real trend in the country, that these very people who are exploiting Molly Tibbetts' death have absolutely no concern about whatsoever. Thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. But when it comes to immigrants, you're right, whether they're undocumented or documented, study after study shows. You look at enclaves, you look at communities that are where immigrants are prevalent, and crime rates actually go down. But that doesn't matter because we have possibly some anecdotal evidence showing that an undocumented man killed a woman, right? An American citizen. So let me give you more from Sandy Tibbetts Murphy. She also says Molly was murdered because a man denied her right to say no. Our national discussion needs to be about the violence committed in our society, mostly by men. So when we previously covered this story, I shared some numbers regarding murders that were committed, homicides that were committed by white men. And I was doing that to make a point, right? Oh, look at all these white men committing homicides. Maybe we should deport them. Maybe we should really reconsider what citizenship means in the country. Maybe being born here isn't good enough. Obviously, I was saying that to make a statement. I wasn't being serious because I don't genuinely think we should deport white men from the country. But you can politicize anything. You can exploit any number for your advantage, right? And in the country, if you really want to have a conversation about, violence against women, maybe we do need to address, the perpetrators of these crimes. Republicans continuously vote no on the Violence Against Women Act, which is legislation that aims to provide women with the resources to defend themselves and take these domestic abusers to court. Why do Republicans keep voting against that? I'm curious.
Sends a strong message to Republican men that they probably like. And, so her talking about basically toxic masculinity and men not being willing to accept a no and all that, you could look at that and say, well, that's politicizing it, hypothetically, if I were to, launch some sort of campaign. But at the very least, it seems to have something to do with the actual killing, and not just picking out one demographic characteristic of who the person was. And I would also like to say, one of the reasons I'm so angry about what they're doing with Molly Tibbetts and her murder is that it's not just restrained to them being the ones who are politicizing it. We then have to step in and respond to it because of this racist campaign that they're involved in. But I don't want to. I don't want to talk about any of this in relation to her death. I didn't know Molly. I didn't know what she believed. God knows how she would feel about someone like me talking in this way. But I feel like I have to step in because of how blatantly racistly her murder is being used.
Yeah, it's pretty.
But there's nothing about this situation that's good. And we're being forced into this position by really callous, politically motivated, self-interested people.
Yeah. Molly's father also spoke out and went the extra mile and thanked the Hispanic community. So I want to give you his specific statements. Again, this is Molly's father, Rob Tibbetts. He says the Hispanic community are Iowans. They have the same values as Iowans. As far as I'm concerned, they're Iowans with better food. This is what he said during her eulogy, by the way. He continued to say, we're at the end of a long ordeal, but we need to turn toward life, Molly's life, because Molly's nobody's victim. Molly's my hero.
I can't imagine, obviously can't imagine it happening at all, but then having to respond to this as the family, having this entire machine take her up and try to use her for their cause, it's just horrible to put that on top of the pain that they're already feeling.
All right.
And to go really fast, to go back to something that you said, Donald Trump is speaking favorably about her now, but when he sees some of the negative stuff that the family has said, if more comes out, do you honestly think that he won't turn and start attacking her family? There's no one who is immune to that.
I certainly would not put it past him.
And then it will take that fast. His supporters will turn on the family too.
I know. So my question is, are we proud of what we are as a country right now?
You could be applying that to literally any issue, and I would say no.
Yeah, it's embarrassing. It really is. We live in a country where people think it makes more sense to defend a guy who consistently defames the parents of Sandy Hook victims rather than defending those Sandy Hook victims. That's the country we live in. Yeah. Anyway.
We've all gone mad.
I'm going to stop myself before I get myself into some trouble with other commentary. So let's talk about John McCain, because that was a big story. Over the weekend, John McCain passed away at the age of 81. He was diagnosed with brain cancer, and before the weekend begun, his family had notified the press that they were going to discontinue his treatment. Soon after that, news broke that he had passed away. Now, there have been some interesting developments coming from the White House in response to McCain's death, and they are not good. So let's start off with Trump refusing to really address the fact that John McCain had died. Now, first, Press Secretary Sarah Huckabee Sanders, Chief of Staff John Kelly, and other White House aides advocated for an official statement that gave the Vietnam War POW plaudits for his military and Senate service and called him a hero. But Trump was not in favor of that. In fact, according to reports, Trump told aides that he wanted to post a brief tweet instead, and the statement praising him, John McCain, was not released. Okay, so what did Trump say through Twitter? That's where he's this articulate communicator. My deepest sympathies and respect go out to the family of Senator John McCain. Our hearts and prayers are with you. So this is speculation, but I would argue that it's accurate speculation. Trump didn't even write that. There were no misspellings. There was no grammatical error. There was punctuation. Someone else wrote that on his behalf. And even so, it didn't even really acknowledge John McCain, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I didn't have as much of a problem with the tweet as most people did.
Yeah,
he
I don't
certainly
really care.
Could have said more.
I don't expect anything from Trump. Look, this whole story puts us in a weird position because on one hand, of course, we had issues with John McCain. He was a war hawk, all of that. It's not like we agreed with everything he did. Now, progressives get ready to be angry with me. He wasn't all bad either, right? Now, Trump has no redeeming qualities. I don't care about Trump. There's nothing that I can turn to and say, nah, that was good. That was a good thing about Trump. With John McCain, it was different. He was a mixed bag. Yes, he was a war hack. Yes, he said some pretty terrible things about the Asian community in the past. I got no love for him when it comes to those things. Yeah. But when it comes to, some of the things he was outspoken about, whether it be about immigrants, whether it be about speaking up against Donald Trump, those are the things that are admirable. He was the McCain-Feingold. He was the only Republican senator, if I'm remembering correctly. No, he was the one who made the deciding vote in the Affordable Care Act repeal.
To save part of it.
So he wasn't all bad, okay?
Yeah,
so everybody
he was mostly bad. He was the vast majority bad.
Yes.
He was almost entirely bad.
But with that said, you are a U.S. president. Just have a little bit of class. I know that we can't really expect that from him. And he hated McCain. It was clear he hated McCain. He said that he preferred soldiers who didn't get captured, a reference to McCain being a prisoner of war for 6 years.
Yeah.
Anyway, so during a press conference, here's how Trump handled questions about McCain's death.
Nothing at all. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody.
So one other thing that I wanted to say to juxtapose his response to McCain's passing. Remember last week, Trump was tweeting nonstop about how admirable Manafort is.
That's true.
This is a man, okay, who was working for the Russian government and was hiding money from the U.S. government so he would evade taxes, okay? And I do want to clarify that error. I think that there was someone on this network who said that Manafort's convictions had nothing to do with Russia. It absolutely did have something to do with Russia because he made his money through Russia, through representing Russian interests in Ukraine in order to help Vladimir Putin achieve what he wanted in Ukraine. And then he made $60 million doing it and hid $30 million from the U.S. government so he could evade taxes. So the root of that problem was Russia and the fact that Manafort was a foreign agent who failed to register as a foreign agent here in the United States. Just want to make sure that we correct any errors that might have aired on our network. With that said, though, what are your thoughts on all of this, Sean?
The obvious thing to say is it's pathetic, but it probably would go maybe in the top 50 most pathetic things that Donald Trump has done. I mean, the simplest thing in the world would be, Mr. President, do you have any comments about John McCain? Yeah, I'd just like to thank him for his service. Obviously, great work in the military, fighting on behalf of his country, and a long and distinguished career in the Senate that will be remembered for a very long time. Thank you. That's the easiest thing in the world. You could say that about somebody that just punched you in the face and it wouldn't be that hard. John McCain's dead. You've won, sort of, I guess. You hated the man, now he's dead, and you're somehow still alive. It would be the easiest thing in the world to just act. Take your pick, and I apologize if I offend anyone. Either act like an adult or act like a man. Do one of those two things. Maybe an adult man, if you've got it inside of you to do that. The simplest thing in the world to just tweet. For all of our disagreements, John McCain did what he believed in, and he'll be remembered as one of the giants of the Senate in the 20th century. That's simple. That's not saying he was right on the issues. That's not saying he wasn't a D-bag to you or anything like that. That is the most simple thing in the world. But he doesn't have any of that in him. He is a vindictive, narcissistic, tiny little man-child.
That's right. That's what we're dealing with.
And this is not from my point of view. I don't care about John McCain, really. I feel bad for his family, and that's what I expressed on Twitter. I lost my father to cancer. I can only imagine what it's like for the family to do the same thing right now. But he's of your party. You agree with 96% of the votes that he's taken in his career, and you can't work up 7 or 8 words to rub together in his honor?
No, he can't. He can't even handle allowing the release of a White House statement that he doesn't have to write himself. He won't allow it.
You know what? Maybe it was that the word hero was in there.
Yeah,
and that's why he has to attack John McCain on that particular thing, which, you know, he's done terrible things afterward, pushed for policies that killed hundreds of thousands of people, did about as bad stuff as he can. But what he did in Vietnam was heroic. I haven't done anything like that in my life. Have you done anything like that in your life?
Of course I haven't.
Edwin?
And by the way,
most of the people watching this happen.
It wasn't just that he was a prisoner of war for years. It was that he was being tortured to give up top secret information to our enemies at the time, and he refused to do it. Yeah. In the meantime, Trump didn't go to Vietnam because he lied about bone spurs in his foot.
And he had his personal Vietnam, which was the fight to not get an STD, which is his quote, not mine. So that's why he lashes out, because he sees in John McCain something that he has never had. One single ounce of heroism or integrity or honor or any of that.
Let's take a break. When we come back, I'll read your TYT Lives, and also some drama involving National Enquirer releasing Trump's dormant from his contract. There might be some juicy tidbits here, okay? Come right back.
I just shot a clip. It's time sensitive and it needs to be edited. Did anybody call for it? Editor.
Need this in an hour?
Sure, an editor too.
Alright, which one do you like better? What is this? Or what is this? Go.
I'm just doing what's right.
Yes, oh my gosh.
Mexico's going to pay for the wall.
It's so good.
Very, very big price.
I can't finish it because it's so good.
Welcome back to a whole new season of Murder with Friends, the show where two friends get together and talk about the darker sides of history. You guys know that I go all the way on conspiracy theories, so work with me. How did the police let that happen?
Because they were corrupt at the time. It was like awful, not that they still are. Statistically, we've all met someone who's murdered someone.
It's creepy. You can't talk about a murderer without going back to his origins. It's Murder with Friends. Don't be scared. You're among friends.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Froze and crashed.
You know, I'm watching a documentary of the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
Easy for me. I started off in Brooklyn. My father gave me a small loan of $1 million. All my life, I was told no.
You said I had small hands. They're not small. I never heard that one before.
Guess who
Sexual Misconduct Edition.
Does your perp prey on children?
No. Did he grope someone and have a dynamite recipe for flatbread?
I don't know who this guy is. Does he have a terrifying button in his office?
Yes.
Is it Donnie?
Yes.
Hey guys, welcome back to TYT. We're going to get right to the rest of the show, but to answer the super chat question from the previous break, do we have any thoughts on the Donna Brazil Twitter controversy? The answer is no. Moving forward, so there is a new report indicating that Trump's doorman has been released from an important contract, so I want to give you the details on that. A Trump World Tower doorman who apparently had some detailed information about an affair that Trump had, which allegedly led to an illegitimate child, as it's being reported, has been released from a contract, a catch and kill contract with AMI. That is the parent company for National Enquirer. Now, AMI has been known to do this with other individuals who had salacious details about either Trump's past or Trump's present. This was all an effort by David Pecker, the head of this organization, to continue supporting Trump and to continue ensuring that he is not hurt politically through his past scandals. So this contract was signed by Dino Sahuddin. So Dino Sahuddin is the doorman. The contract appears to have been signed on November 15th, 2015, and states that AMI has exclusive rights to the story, but does not mention the details of the story itself beyond saying, source shall provide AMI with information regarding Trump's illegitimate child.
Wow.
So that's written in the contract. AMI will not owe Source any compensation if AMI does not publish the exclusive. And the top of the agreement shows that the doorman could receive a sum of $30,000 payable upon publication as set forth below. So that was the original contract. It was later amended to indicate... I know. It was later amended to indicate that they would pay him regardless. So the third page of the agreement shows that about a month later, the parties signed an amendment that states that Sahuddin would be paid $30,000 within 5 days of receiving the amendment. It says the exclusivity period laid out in the agreement is extended in perpetuity and shall not expire. Okay, so it has been expired. Not expired necessarily, but AMI has released him from this contract. And part of the reason why this is happening is because David Pecker appears to have turned on Trump. So this is all part of a massive investigation involving Trump and some of his wrongdoings. Sahuddin had actually spoken to CNN earlier this year in April. He told CNN he claims to have knowledge of a relationship Trump had with his former housekeeper that resulted in a child. I want to be absolutely clear, though, that has not been verified by any investigative journalist. So,
not even the great investigative journalists at National Enquirer?
I don't know. I doubt it. But the whole point of these catch and kill contracts is to ensure that these individuals with knowledge of Trump's alleged wrongdoings share that information with AMI and no one else, or else they would face a penalty. And then AMI never publishes the story. It's all an effort to kind of cover up what Trump has done in the past.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to say I would love to live in a country where we didn't have stories like this.
Yeah.
Remember under Obama, all the illegitimate child stories we had to cover? God, I really wish that we had a normal president. And someday I hope for myself and I hope for you that someday we have that again. For now, though, National Enquirer. So here's the thing. Anybody who's ever come across Donald Trump could claim to have knowledge of an illegitimate child that he has. If they're willing to pay $30,000, they must have thought there was at least something to it. Doesn't mean that it happened, but he had some kind of evidence, I suppose. And this is, I think, an effective demonstration to anyone out there who possesses sensitive information that you really have to gamble on when to release it, because apparently National Enquirer was protecting him from November of 2015 until right before the election in 2016, At that point, an affair was worth $130,000. Early on, a child was only worth $30,000. So if he had gambled and waited later on, he could have made more money.
Now, this is relevant because the whole question of illegal campaign contributions comes up. So if AMI was willing to pay this doorman $30,000 in an effort to catch and kill the story, well, that could be considered an illegal campaign contribution, which is probably the reason why David Pecker has allegedly decided to turn on Trump and, work with authorities. He's been cooperating with authorities.
Yeah, I would guess, I would say that at least if that's it, and there aren't other things, then that actually sounds more like he's just protecting himself without really necessarily having anything. Like that again, you could get the immunity for that without knowing for sure whether it was true. I don't think that Mueller's team or the New York prosecutors would necessarily offer it in that case, but it's not impossible.
Mm-hmm.
If he's doing that, he could be committing campaign finance violations without necessarily implicating Donald Trump. I believe that the combination of David Pecker and Cohen probably does implicate Trump, but it doesn't necessarily have to.
That's exactly right. And so, we'll see how this plays out. It's a good thing that the investigation is taking place. There could be evidence showing that David Pecker acted on his own behalf, had nothing to do with Cohen, had nothing to do with Trump. We'll see. But I also want to be clear that there are a lot of different issues at play when it comes to Trump. It's not just the Russia investigation. There's, of course, the Russia investigation, in addition to an investigation into illegal campaign contributions that involves Karen McDougal, Stormy Daniels, his Trump Tower doorman. Then there is a third investigation, criminal investigation, pertaining to the Trump charity, in which Trump allegedly used charity money to enrich himself and pay off his own settlements.
Yeah.
So there are all these investigations taking place because Trump is, of course, corrupt. So what you'll hear from the right wing is that everyone is focusing on Russia and only Russia. But no, there are separate investigations into separate potentially criminal wrongdoings.
Isn't it crazy the things that hypothetically you could go down for? Like, I don't necessarily think that he will, but these sorts of campaign finance violations are this very identifiable thing that he might have done, but he gets away because he's president with doing far worse things. Like, there are over 500 kids that are still separated from their families. Any one of those should be enough to take someone down or send them to jail. He has wrecked entire families, not to mention, of course, the thousands of others who, although they might be reunited, their relationship has fundamentally changed for the rest of their lives. We had a video on the Damage Report this morning of a kid meeting his mom again for the first time, and the kid just runs away. He either doesn't recognize or he's actually scared or angry at his mom, so much so that he doesn't actually run to her. But that's not what's going to take him down. Taking us out of the Paris Climate Accords, risking the future of our species and our civilization, that's totally fine. You're the president. You can do whatever you want. The drone strikes and supporting Saudi Arabia and its war on Yemen, all these things are totally fine.
Yeah. Well, look, the problem is, John, that shows like ours focus too much on all the wrongdoings of Donald Trump. We should focus on other things.
Next week, we give him a pass.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Well, apparently there's a lot of money in doing that, but we're not going to do that here. All right, moving on. Speaking of all of these possible liabilities that Trump can deal with, Congressional Republicans are passing around a document listing all the potential issues that could be investigated should Democrats take control of Congress after the midterm elections. Now, Trump has a long list of bad behavior, and Republicans have managed to avoid certain investigations that Democrats have wanted to launch because Democrats don't have any power in Congress at the moment. So, thanks to their control of Congress, according to Axios, which obtained this list, Republicans have blocked most of the Democrats' investigative requests, but if the House flips, the GOP loses its power to stymie. So what does that mean? What are the potential areas of investigation that Democrats might want to take hold of should they take hold of Congress in the future? Well, this list is very long, but I want you to stay with me. President Trump's tax returns. He has refused to release his taxes. We all know that. Trump family businesses and whether they comply with the Constitution's emoluments clause, including the Chinese trademark grant to the Trump Organization.
How crazy is that?
Trump's dealings with Russia, including the president's preparation for his meeting with Vladimir Putin.
Do we know what that's a reference to?
So Trump, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe it has to do with, remember Trump invited Vladimir Putin to meet with him in the White House, and that's since been postponed? I think that's what they're referring to.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know what preparation in terms of like notes or something.
I mean, there could be more scandal that we're unaware of. The payment to Stephanie Clifford, a.k.a. Stormy Daniels, James Comey's firing, Trump's firing of U.S. attorneys, Trump's proposed transgender ban for the military. Remember that?
Yeah.
Feels like that was years ago. Yeah, there's more. So let's look. Let's see what it is. Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin's business dealings.
Oh.
That's a very broad bullet point, by the way. White House staff's personal email use.
Oh, God.
Okay, let's stop there for a second.
Oh, God.
White House staff's personal email use. I know we've talked about it on the show before, but we've been bombarded with so many crazy Trump stories that, like, we just forgot. We just let it go.
We just lock everybody up. Everybody. I'm including me and you.
Well, that's what they're worried
Everybody
about.
go to jail. Start over.
That's why Republicans in Congress are passing this document along to their colleagues, because they want to prepare themselves for what's to come if there is, in fact, some sort of blue wave. Let me give you more. Cabinet Secretary travel, office expenses, and other misused perks. Discussion of classified information at Mar-a-Lago. Okay, so let's stop there for a second. Just to remind you, Trump officials, Trump lawyers, just openly talking about sensitive or classified information in public spaces. Jared Kushner's ethics law compliance, dismissal of members of the EPA Board of Scientific Counselors, the travel ban, family separation policy, hurricane response in Puerto Rico, election security and hacking attempts, White House security clearances. So the procedure for Republicans hasn't been to hold their own president accountable for this long laundry list of scandals, but rather do damage control or prevent investigations. And now they're concerned because if Democrats take control, they won't be able to stymie investigations the way that they have been so far.
It would be really interesting if they were able to get, through Freedom of Information Act requests or something like that, internal communications about the Muslim travel ban, the family separation policy, and the response to the Hurricane Maria. That would be really interesting, because in a White House filled with people like Stephen Miller and things like that, especially as that hurricane is bearing down on them in the immediate aftermath, God only knows what they were saying. And what they weren't saying in terms of any sort of responsibility to actually help them rebuild. That could be really interesting.
Absolutely. And I'm just curious what will happen if Democrats do take control. Because I think that it takes the right kind of Democrats to aggressively investigate Trump and also hold him accountable for his actions. So last week we talked to you a little bit about how Nancy Pelosi doesn't want to push for impeachment. And that was insane, right? I mean, for me, that showed, this is after the Manafort convictions, after Michael Cohen pleaded guilty. I mean,
I don't know. Look, partly I want to pressure them to focus more on providing a positive idea of what they would do were they to gain control. And if she'd started immediately talking about impeachment, she would have been attacked for that. I don't know. Look, I don't want her to be in control of the Democrats in the House. If we take control, I can say that much. So at the end of the day, I guess I'm not really that concerned about her priorities.
Yeah, look, I think that there's a legitimate conversation, discussion, debate about whether or not it makes sense to impeach Trump, right? But at the same time, for me, it wasn't about the issue of impeaching Trump. It was more about how Nancy Pelosi reacts to things where she does have some power and can accomplish something. So the way that the Dreamers were put on the back burner during that debate about funding the government, that drove me crazy.
Yes.
Now, that was more Chuck Schumer than Nancy Pelosi, but Nancy Pelosi is still in a position of power. Chuck Schumer certainly was in a position of power. They were in a position where they had this rare leverage, even though they're not, the majority in Congress, and they just let that opportunity go. And it made me very upset. So my point is, we need Democrats, progressives that are going to fight for the right things. It's not enough that Republicans are afraid of these investigations. The investigations have to actually happen if Democrats take control.
Yeah, and we have to, in particular areas, constrain our expectations, even if they do gain control, and then in other areas not so much. But in terms of, like, they can pass whatever bills they want if they control the House.
Yeah.
If they don't control the Senate, or even if they do, it's not necessarily going to go anywhere. But they can hope to, maybe if they're in power, especially as we get into the primaries for the next presidential election, they can perhaps drive some of the media coverage by focusing on particular issues, assuming the media pays attention at all. Look, I think the media is going to be really ready to just jump into the horse race. And who is this person going to announce? Is this person, maybe they're going to run? And so I worry about the ability of even a Democratic majority with a bunch of people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and, as I said earlier today, Rashida Tlaib was on the show today. People like that, they can drive a lot of good discussion about progressive policies, but if the media doesn't pay attention, it's going to be harder for people to actually realize it. I mean, they'll always be able to come on here, thankfully, home progressives, and we'll talk about those things. But we'll see. I think CNN, they've got their big screens, and they want to start circling states and all that stuff. I don't know how excited they're going to be to talk about the policies.
Well, we can't rely on CNN, right?
I do.
We can't rely on cable news to get the word out. You have to be scrappy. You have to be innovative. You have to find better ways to get the message out. And even though it was very clear that CNN was so dismissive of Bernie Sanders, he still managed to get his message out.
Eventually, yes.
So that's important, and we can learn something from that.
Oh, I can't wait to see, too, because I don't know if you remember, but after the election, especially after the inauguration, CNN was like, can we get Bernie on a town hall every single week? We'll see how they feel once he's running again, though.
Yeah.
Are they going to be doing those little mock debates with Ted Cruz and stuff like that?
Doubt it.
Yeah.
All right, John, thank you for joining me in the first hour.
Thank you.
I know you had a long day.
That's okay. It was fun.
Make sure you check out his Larry King interview. And Brett will join in for hour 2. Stick around. We'll be right back.
You want Christopher Walken to say, nerd alert. Wow. Wait a second, Doc. Whoa, wait a second, Doc. You mean to tell me this is a nerd alert? That's right, Marty. We've entered a nerd alert.
A lot of gifts to you.
Super gift.
We are approaching the holiday gaming season, so with that, we should take a look at some of the great releases that are coming out. Some of the things that you're excited about, are they actually worth looking at? We're going to go up to Nintendo and see. And that's what brings us here to YouTube Space LA, where we are going to take a look at what it would have looked like on set. Space Gun. This is Frank Miller. I don't think I need to tell you how influential he is.
So Arya just murdered all of this house. Oh, Frank.
You might advance 20% less in auditions now. I would say for $1,000, we can give you the full body experience by putting you in a body bag and watching a movie. A lot of you would probably pay $1,000 for that. I wouldn't be surprised.
A lot of people have weird sex things that might enjoy this.
Oh, maybe it's for the adult industry.
Hello, welcome to What the Flick.
Hey, everybody, welcome to What the Flick. Hey, everybody. Starting this bus. Here we go. Have at it. All right. Cheers. Hey, everybody, welcome to What the Flick. Star Wars. I'm excited. As you can tell, sorry to the booth for yelling in the mic. Sorry, people at home. I'm super excited. But if you're going to complain that so many modern movies are the same, then this stands out.
No.
Yeah, it is definitely not the
It
same.
affects your mood.
Oh, hello, Twin Peaks, episode 8. Boy, you guys owe us.
Oh, boy.
We really did everyone a service and watched a movie called The Competition. And then he takes him on a steak out. He takes him on a steak out and gives him the burgers. I have a couple of fries. But he's still interested. He's like, I think I may like him even more now. Right? To me,
No, the narrative is fantastic. The way that it played out was wonderful. I'm arguing with Daenerys. I would have made a better queen.
All right, so what are your numbers then?
I give it a 9. I think it's the best American animated film this year. I give it a 7.
My number's 10. Best movie of the year.
I'm not going to half measure it. It's a 10.
Yay!
More than 52 people today have come forward claiming responsibility for the murder of the Black Dahlia. I don't understand who these people are. Why do you want this notoriety? It wasn't an accident. It wasn't an opportunistic killing. It was absolutely methodical and totally plotted out. All the different sorts of travelers that they would apprehend.
Yeah, he was called the Zodiac Killer is because when he said in his note, he said, "This is the Zodiac." They'll cut leather. Like a lot of psychopaths will.
My favorite thing you've ever seen.
They'll first start off by cutting leather because they want to feel how it feels to cut leather, to cut human flesh, and then they move gradually into more and more dangerous things. They started conspiring to eat them.
2 other people died on this trip, and then once they sort of ripped the Band-Aid off where they were able to eat Patrick Dolan and live with themselves and also survive.
That's what they call frontier justice.
Mm-hmm.
People would get murdered all the time, and then they would have to bring someone in. They would ask what happened. They're like, "Oh, you insulted that guy? Okay, yeah, he insulted him, so I guess he deserved to die."
I feel like I could run so far. I feel like I could run a marathon minimum. You ever feel that way, man?
Hey guys,
Hey, look at it go.
how much did she have to drink today on the show?
I don't know. She can't hold her liquor, so I gave her Kool-Aid.
Oh, wow! On the upside, we have Kool-Aid. I love Kool-Aid. Happy half hour on Fridays. We'll give you good news and good booze.
Oh yeah, I have TYT lives for you, but Brett Ehrlich joins in, and I'm excited about it.
I got the sweater back.
You did get the sweater back.
Sweater's back. It was covered in cat hair for a while. Now,
Soft sweater.
oh, damn, it's a great sweater. I will say that it took a long time to get the cat hair off the sweater. Went to a dry cleaner, so it's a decidedly floofier sweater now. But it was clean.
It's hot. It's a hot day in Los Angeles.
Yeah, but we got AC in the studio because it's 0 degrees here all the time. I go to put my sweater on and I see this attached to it. This is a lollipop, a green lollipop that was attached to it, and I don't know if you have Super HD. There is just blue fuzz all over this lollipop.
How did that happen?
It happened because I got this lollipop, I dropped it, and I was like, the secret is you just wash off the dirt. I thought you could do that, but the sad thing, look at that little fuzz right here.
That was a great shot, Edwin.
Edwin's so quick.
Wow.
I don't know if you can see it with the
Great
look at how
depth of field
patriotic it is. Fuzz. But I'm gonna go. So whoever gives me the most money, I could eat it.
Yeah, I feel like that shot represented what America's currently dealing with. Something good covered in crap.
I have literally no idea what this is. What is this?
It looks like a piece of.
It's not this or.
So.
Moist.
All right, we gotta go.
All right.
So,
news.
I have an exciting announcement to make. I'm excited about it. This has been a long time coming. TYT has updated its website.
Yes.
Yeah, look at that. Looking
wow.
good. Okay, so if you go to tyt.com/live, that's where you can watch the show live. Okay, you'll find a red button. At least that's what the script says. And then you click that red button and you watch the show.
It's in the top corner.
Yeah. So what I love the most about the new website, let's please keep this image up, is I look great in that photo. So, winning!
For those of you listening to the podcast version of this, she looks great in that photo.
And Jake also looks good.
Yeah, he's smizing.
Yeah, no, but honestly, I do love this new website because it's just easier to navigate. It reminds me a lot of what our app looks like.
Yep.
And our app is fantastic. Look, you guys know me. I don't BS you. There have been numerous talks on the show where Jank is bragging about some new TYT thing, and I'm like, yeah, whatevs. But I really do love the app, and I love the new website design. So please check it out. Just go to tyt.com/live, and I promise you'll enjoy it. I know that it's new. Sometimes new is different and weird, but you'll get used to it quickly. It's easier, in my opinion, to navigate than what we had before.
Yeah, I don't think anything's gone. It's just way easier to find everything.
Yeah, it's cool.
You can get all the podcasts. They have a list of every podcast that we upload in order of how it's uploaded. So latest first, you can go back. It's great.
I just want to talk about the website all day, not talk about the news. Okay.
You don't want to talk about Mick Mulvaney?
Oh, no. I do want to talk about Mulvaney. We're going to get to that soon. But first, a few TYT lives for you. Oh, would you look at that? Wolfpack Warrior tweets in and says, wow, the new TYT website is amazeballs. Love it, guys. Thank you. Gabby Marita says Trump has literally said nicer things about neo-Nazis than he's ever said about John McCain.
Hi, Gabby.
That was a pretty devastating point and very accurate. Hey, Gabby. And also a few TYT super chats for you. Jay, the High Roller, thank you for supporting the show, says somehow Trump hates John McCain so much he refused to even lie about the issue after McCain's passing. Think how easy it is for Trump to lie about everything else. Sad. Another devastating and excellent point. Carolee did not leave a comment, but Carolee, thank you so much for supporting the show. And then James William Jr. says, Anna, you mean you're not trying to fill the void left by Alex Jones? Loving the shade, hashtag postgame? Probably not. I know what you're referring to, probably not. Maybe in the future, but not today. All right, let's get to some other news. An official who was previously working for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau has tendered his resignation in response to Mick Mulvaney, who is the interim head of the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Now, Seth Frotman, who is the individual who has decided to quit his position, is the person who oversees student loans at the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And this is an incredibly important job because the whole point is to protect students from predatory lenders. But what Frotman has experienced under Mick Mulvaney's leadership has been an organization that essentially does not look out for the consumer, but instead protects big business. So Frotman will be stepping down from his position as student loan ombudsman at the end of the week. He held the position since 2016. Now, just to give you a sense of how incredibly important this particular position is, and how much it's helped students in the past, the office has returned $750 million to harmed student loan borrowers since its creation. So I want to give you a sense of why Mick Mulvaney has been so disastrous. He downgraded the mission of Frotman's student loan office and moved it under the umbrella of consumer education instead of enforcement. So, look, I did a long, detailed piece on No Filter, which Brett helped me produce, about Mick Mulvaney and how he has essentially taken the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau apart. He has essentially delegitimized it, has deconstructed it, and made it worthless, a worthless agency. I mean, the whole point of the CFPB, which was Elizabeth Warren's idea, was to have a government agency that really fights for the consumers, protects the consumers, and looks out for them rather than the interests of big businesses, big banks. And Mick Mulvaney has always hated the CFPB. He doesn't care about student borrowers. He's been very clear about that. And now we're seeing the outcome. Unfortunately, we have a moral person, a principled person stepping down because he sees that his role has been diminished by someone like Mulvaney.
Yes, and it makes total sense. The person in charge of all of this ran Trump University.
I know.
You know? And when you reduce it to something that simple, you just kind of get it. And then, yeah. You just kind of get it.
Okay, Mark.
You just kind of get it. It turns into, essentially, like, now you look at it through the lens of, well, it doesn't make good business sense to be returning all this extra money to people who spent too much money and were defrauded out of certain elements of their student loan fee and these exorbitant fees that have been paid out. There is a detail, so go read the whole letter. It has amazing excerpts.
Yeah, the letter is fantastic. So when Frotman quit, he wrote a letter to Mick Mulvaney. Various news agencies, NPR specifically, obtained that letter, and it's a long one, very detailed one, but I did pick some of my favorite excerpts from it to read to you guys. Again, this is from Seth Frotman's resignation letter. He says the following: unfortunately, under your, Mick Mulvaney's leadership, the Bureau has abandoned the very consumers it is tasked by Congress with protecting. Instead, you have used the Bureau to serve the wishes of the most powerful financial companies in America. Okay, stop. So, one of the things that Mick Mulvaney did is he helped to strengthen payday lenders. I've talked about this on the show before. So payday lenders under the Obama administration had been regulated. I wish they were regulated a little more aggressively, but they were regulated, and they were also facing a pretty serious lawsuit. Mick Mulvaney comes in, and he's like, yeah, these payday lenders give me a lot of money in my campaigns, so let's just put this lawsuit on hold indefinitely.
Yeah.
That's basically what he's looking out for. He's looking out for the people who've been preying on us.
That's it. And it fits the entire narrative of Trump putting people in charge of agencies for the express purpose of destroying those agencies. It is so transparent that despite what Trump has said, this stuff is not for you. He's trying to build up his base, which is going to be blind to it, but you can make noise because if you want to go, this is getting people at such an unfairly young age. This is a very early chance to get people in debt.
It's crazy.
And if you realize that the people in charge of the government, it's just so intuitive that if you let businesses run amok, if you let people who want to get people into debt, financial service companies, if you let them run amok, you get into the kind of trouble that it doesn't take a very long memory to remember.
I know.
You look back to 10 years ago. 10 years ago, a financial institutions run amok got us into the biggest foobar situation since the Great Depression. And it doesn't take a genius to find out why. It's just so out in the open that it's so frustrating. And another thing that's very obvious to me, we need to go to graphic 55, as I've taken us down into the dumps of the financial crisis. Graphic 55 is a picture of Mick Mulvaney. If we get to it, it is just, that's him, okay? Does this guy look like a villain? Yes. Does he look like a specific villain? Yes. Graphic 56. This is the villain in the movie Raiders of the Lost Ark. For those of you watching, listening to the podcast, this is the guy that burns his hand.
That is uncanny.
Mick Mulvaney. Graphic 57 is a side-by-side.
That is uncanny, Brett.
So the two of these men, here's the thing, you can't opt into a round, and it's bad to make fun of people's appearance. The involuntary thing is the perfectly round head. Actually, I applaud his perfectly round head. It's not his fault. Would love to have a head that beautiful, but you have to opt into these glasses.
And he did it. He opted in.
And maybe it's because the round glasses are exactly the same perfectly round shape as his perfectly round head.
Maybe he's the same person. Maybe that's the same person.
Yep.
And you are the only person smart enough to realize it.
I'm just saying, when I was Googling photos of these two, this is an official portrait. When I was Googling, someone else did it already, but I had the idea at the same time. Or before. I'm just saying, whoever that is. But yeah.
Uncanny. Okay.
It's very frustrating.
So a few more things that I want to read from the resignation letter, and this is what I really want to get to. So Mulvaney has gone out of his way to protect big banks, and Seth Frotman calls him out on that. So after 10 months under your leadership, when he says your, he means Mick Mulvaney's leadership, it has become clear that consumers no longer have a strong, independent consumer bureau on their side. Late last year, when new evidence came to light showing that the nation's largest banks were ripping off students on campuses across the country by saddling them with legally dubious account fees, Bureau leadership suppressed the publication of a report prepared by Bureau staff. When pressed by Congress about this, you, Mulvaney, chose to leave students vulnerable to predatory practices and deny any responsibility to bring this information to light. Seth Frotman, thank you. Thank you. Because right now, it's so hard to find people in both politics and the media who are principled, who are interested in doing the right thing, who are willing to honestly hurt themselves in an effort to do the right thing. And I commend you for this, because you do or did have an important role. And that role was taken away from you by someone who has no interest in protecting the American people and certainly has no interest in protecting students. So thank you, Seth Frotman, if you ever see this, for doing what you did.
I don't know what to do with the resign thing. I mean, it's very difficult, and honestly, this information would never get out. And if he were to release that information, he'd probably be fired anyway. But I don't understand the thing where you're just like, I'm going to resign defiantly. I can't be associated with this anymore. Because, listen, if this guy doesn't care, and I'm not saying this to be bad or disparage Seth Frotman in the least. Like, his job has been fraught with difficulty, and he made a decision that brought this to light, so not him. But it's just so frustrating that this guy, Mick Mulvaney, who has proven he does not care about people seeking education. He's not going to care if this person defiantly walks off because he's already picked his team.
It's not about Mulvaney and what he cares about. For me, it's more about people who are willing to stand up and, look, this is a cliched statement, but speak truth to power, which is what he did in this case. And you're right. I mean, look, we wouldn't know about how Mulvaney was suppressing that report about the big bank screwing over these students if it weren't for this resignation. And I think making this statement and showing that, hey, you know what, it's not worth it to be associated with these guys, goes a long way. I mean, look, in the age of Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I mean, why would you want that job? Why?
Because it's that job, dude. It's just that job. She doesn't want to do that job.
Yeah, she does.
No, she doesn't want to do that. She wants to have that job. And there's a difference. You see in her dead eyes. She's like, I don't want to be saying this.
That's a low blow, Brett.
I'm saying she didn't opt into the eyes that she has.
Okay.
She decided to have this job, and it's just making her eyes sadder and sadder. Another thing, before we move on, another person famously who had perfectly round glasses was Judge Doom from Roger Rabbit. And Judge Doom is the perfect analog to Mick Mulvaney because he bought the red car so he could dismantle it. Echoing the reason that happens all the time. He's putting the foxes in charge of the hen house. He's charging the hens a crazy amount on their student loans.
Yes.
And they're going to get evicted.
Are you the A-team here at TYT when it comes to villain analysis?
Maybe.
Seems like you are.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Watched a lot of 80s films.
All right, guys. We're going to take a break, but when we come back, we are going to discuss Trump's trade deal with Mexico, and then we have other news. Stick around.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Hassan D. Piker and on Twitter at Hassan the Hunt. And this has been The Breakdown. Was that good, guys?
Okay. Not enough hashtag use. Hashtag abs, hashtag model, hashtag woke bay. Hashtag one black friend. I'm thinking more rings. I got them here. We need more accessories. Way more accessories. I don't know where to put them. Come on, throw these on. Woke bay, not sleep bay. More sexy, too. When's the last time you posted on Instagram? Too long. Come on, man. No, you need to post at least once an hour. What's the outfit of the day today? Is this what you're going with? No. We need more accessories. We need... This doesn't have anything to do... It doesn't... For your gay audience, man. Yeah, the gays love you, man.
Okay. What else? What else do I need to do?
You haven't appropriated a culture in a week. We have like a kimono or something. Damn, that looks good on you, dude. Perfect. How many rings you got on? Do we have any more? I got 3. Yeah, can we get more rings on this? And when you're done, kiss the ring. Look at the camera. Kiss the ring. Maybe like a little wink.
Islam's role in terrorism and all the Huffington Post articles weren't doing well. I was in...
How many likes did our last outfit of the day picture have? Only like 100,000. So I think that's where your focus needs to be. I hear you on all the blah, blah, blah social issues. We need to focus on followers.
Kids in Yemen.
We don't care if you sleep at night. Dab, dab. Okay. Dab. There you go. More. Talk about yourself more.
I'm Hassan Piker. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram.
Yeah, be more into it.
Instagram is important for me. Americans losing access to healthcare coverage.
I hear you. Attack Tommy more.
I've done it. So many... She shoots out of her living room now. It's like punching down now.
We're okay with that. That helps the brand. We made you. We got you verified. You're nothing. Come on.
So I don't know what else I need to do here.
Just take off that shirt.
That's exactly why Tommy Lauren is stupid. I hate you. I'm Hassan Piker. Follow me on Instagram.
Hashtag woke bay.
Hashtag woke bay. Please follow me. Alright, well, the Turks special election day coverage dropping. An amazing power. Look at this battle. We're talking about power.
It's like a our destiny child.
We're all too strong. We start a revolution. Yes, another one. That's exciting. Wow. So the best writers in the country are right here on this panel, with the obvious exception of John Irola.
Let's not so quickly discount Harry Potter fan fiction.
This is the first ever power panel with Donald Trump as president.
We have elected the top Twitter troll in the country.
You know, I can't get over the fact that Donald Trump already has lower numbers than George Bush did after Katrina.
We got to get that pretending that race is not an issue in this country.
Now keep in mind, racism has gone away until Barack Obama brought it back.
That's right.
They want to protect life so much that they want to ensure that insurance companies don't cover your maternity care.
Their legislation is always accompanied by some kind of moral judgment, right? This idea that poverty is a choice. What ran me away from Christianity was judgment and condemnation.
Assaulting peaceful protesters in North Dakota, crazier than bombing Yemen, crazier than bombing Syria so much they ran out of bombs. You mean crazier than funding ISIS and trying to knock off Assad at the same time?
Amazing footage came out today of a 5-year-old child being miraculously pulled from rubble in Aleppo. A miracle and a reminder of the horror of that conflict is still present every single day.
My name is Sophie Sai, and I'm a video editor and producer at TYT. I edit Facebook Originals, Aggressive Progressives, Pop Trigger, but I also work on Main Show. I produce the Happy Half Hour. I think my happiest moment is spending time with my coworkers outside of work, hanging out with them and getting to know what they like to do or what movies they like to watch and what hobbies they have. My hobby is playing with my dog and going out to eat. I think that's my favorite thing to do on the weekend.
Hey everyone, welcome back to TYT. Anna Kasparian and Brett Ehrlich with you. I want to move forward onto the story about the trade agreement with Mexico, so let's get right to it.
I'll allow it.
Yes. See that you do. All right. Donald Trump has reached an agreement with Mexico in regard to a trade deal. And based on the details that are being reported by the New York Times and other sources, the deal mostly has to do with auto manufacturing. And what we know so far is that the agreement reached with Mexico is simply a revised NAFTA deal, which so far excludes Canada. However, officials from Canada will be traveling to the United States on Tuesday, tomorrow, to also take part in these negotiations and see how they can play a role. Now, there are updates to provisions surrounding the digital economy, automobiles, and labor unions. The core of the trade pact, which allows American companies to operate in Mexico and Canada without tariffs, remains intact. Okay, so as it stands now, the changes aren't really that big, but what we do know is that in terms of the auto industry, manufacturing will have to be done in either the United States or Mexico, and workers need to get paid a pretty decent wage. So let me give you the details on that. Under the changes agreed to by Mexico, the United States, car companies would be required to manufacture at least 75% of an automobile's value in North America under the new rules, and that's up from about 62.5% previously in order to qualify for NAFTA's zero tariffs. They will also be required to use more local steel, aluminum, and auto parts and have 40 to 45% of the car made by workers earning at least $16 an hour. So that's good. That is good.
Yeah.
That is good.
Sounds great.
But the whole 40% to 45% of the car made by workers earning at least $16 an hour, let's have 100% of them, right? Like, let's have 100% instead of 40 to 45.
It's a difficult situation. Also, there's no deal. Like, there is a discussion between Peña Nieto, or between Mexico and Trump, and the original deal was between Canada, U.S., and Mexico. It seems like, I don't know, man. I'm not quite sure about Trump's actual deal-making capability. Really?
He's a terrible deal maker, but with that said, is there a possibility that this particular deal is good? Yes, there's a possibility. But I want to be clear that there haven't been enough details about the deal to really, talk about or analyze the outcome or the potential upsides and downsides.
I take this announcement primarily because it is so premature to be on the heels of a horrible week to be Donald Trump. After which, the man needs a win as much as he can get it. He finally gets something that looks like a win, and he makes an announcement. Now, I would compare that to the prevailing sentiment that, like, he doesn't seem to care about anyone on the other side, but he wants to be able to shout into the void across the aisle and be like, I fixed NAFTA, and if he can, great. But right now, it seems like if I was Mexico, I'd be jumping on the opportunity to be like, this guy needs a W.
So, even if he didn't fix NAFTA, he would say that he's fixing NAFTA.
Yeah.
So we all know that. But again, like, it remains to be seen whether or not this particular deal is a good deal, because we just don't have enough details yet. Trump himself failed to really give the American people details, and I have evidence of that. So, he wants to announce this to the press. Let's see what kind of announcement he made. First, he tried to get Peña Nieto on the phone. That's the president of lame duck president of Mexico. Right, take a look.
This is a tremendous thing. What this has to do, they used to call it NAFTA, we're going to call it the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. And we'll get rid of the name NAFTA. It has a bad connotation because the United States was hurt very badly by NAFTA for many years. And now it's a really good deal for both countries. We actually had a good meeting. Some people weren't sure if it was a good meeting, but I was. I have a lot of good meetings, and a lot of people aren't sure if they were good or not. This is something that's very special for our manufacturers and for our farmers from both countries, for all of the people that work for jobs. We have worked long and hard. Your representatives have been terrific. My representatives have been fantastic, too. It's an extremely complex bill, and it's something that I think will be talked about for many years to come, and we made it much simpler, much better for both countries. I like to call this deal the United States-Mexico Trade Agreement. I think it's an elegant name. Probably you and I will agree to the name. The simplest deal is more or less already made. It'll be very easy to do and execute. But Mr. President, you've been my friend, and you have been somebody that's been very special in a lot of ways. We talk a lot. One of the things that I'm excited about is you're going to be helping us at the border. This is one of the largest trade deals ever made, maybe the largest trade deal ever made.
So,
okay, we learned a lot about what's in the trade deal.
Had some good meetings.
United States-Mexico trade deal. I think it's an elegant name. Yeah, very clever, very elegant. Anyway.
Mexico-United States trade agreement is a way better, because it would be must have been a good trade deal.
Damn it, Brett.
Must have been a good name. I get class from Bart. I think it's Skip back there. Jacory giving me a hard pass on musta. I think Roofer's hand is waving on musta. Musta not had a sense of humor. Now I get a laugh from Jacory. I was going to keep with it till it happened. We all need it.
Okay, he also said, we'll see if Canada can be part of the deal. So he keeps messaging that Canada might be excluded. I don't know. Maybe we're not going to deal with Canada. By the way, he also mentioned that the United States has been very hurt by NAFTA. So that may be true when it comes to things like wages or outsourcing of jobs. I totally hear you on that. But there's also been an issue with corn farmers in Mexico and how their lives have been destroyed through the United States mass-producing corn, something that we subsidize here, and we export to Mexico. So it's not like the way Trump talks about NAFTA is, the United States has been victimized by this, and everyone else is living this great life because of NAFTA. No, NAFTA has its upsides and downsides, just like anything in life. And to make it seem as though Mexico has been exploiting us is just ridiculous.
Yeah. One thing is, like, the way he speaks there. When people say, I want a business person, and they always I want a businessman to be in charge of the United States. So that's the discussion you get. That's the kind of statement. That is a CEO, and that's how CEOs go, like, listen, and they don't make a political speech. They say, oh my God, the bottom line's so amazing. We had some great meetings and great people and everything. And that's all to create more, a positive morale or whatever. And he also, like, mixes that with the other bread and butter of his, which is things that people who kind of read headlines on Facebook would complain about at work.
You just said bread and butter, and I got hungry.
I love bread and butter. They're so good together. So much carbs. But they would complain about it at work, and that complaint sounds like they're killing us on NAFTA.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all you have to say.
That's all you have
because
to say.
there's a prevailing sentence, and he smells that out like a truffle pig. Truffle pig. Good God, you're so hungry. We haven't eaten today. It's been quite a crazy. But yes, and if he really wants to help the worker in America, NAFTA, you get a better trade deal. I'm fine with that. I'm for that. Do what's good for American workers through your negotiation process. I don't see anything inherently wrong with kind of pressuring Canada to get in on this while the getting's good. Whatever, let that play out. I'm not going to, just because it's Trump, say it's terrible.
I agree with you on that.
But, do something for unions in America.
Absolutely.
Fight for workers on things that are traditionally good for workers. He's trying to reach for workers at the same time taking away their protections. And his party is the one who, in Missouri, just tried to make it a right-to-work state, which is a made-up term for non-collective bargaining, for give away your leverage state.
Yeah, so you just touched on something so important, because this is all for show. Right? Trump makes it look as though he's looking out for the American worker, when in reality, he purposely put someone like Mick Mulvaney as the head, the temporary head, but still the head of the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Mulvaney has dismantled it and has done away with what little protections there were in place for consumers. And so that's just one example. And Trump will not fight for a living wage. Trump will continuously fight for the big banks and for the Wall Street cronies that love his lack of regulations and honestly, his incompetence, which has led to what I think will be one of the biggest economic collapses that the country has dealt with, aside from the Great Depression. Hopefully not as bad. But anyway, something that we follow on No Filter quite a bit. You guys should check out the show. Hashtag No Filter. All right. Or just No Filter. I don't know. It's a discussion we need to have later about branding. You guys don't care about that. So let's watch the next video, because this is what I was referencing earlier. This is Trump trying to get Mexican President Peña Nieto on the phone.
And I believe the president is on the phone. Enrique? Yeah, you can hook them up. You tell me what. How are you? It's a big thing. A lot of people waiting. Hello. Do you want to put that on this phone, please? Hello. Be helpful. President Trump. Thank you.
I'm going to be honest, there was no news value in showing you that, but it brightened my day.
It goes on for so much longer than I thought it did. I hadn't watched it yet.
Listen, it took a while. Okay? Be helpful.
I'll tell you what, I was an assistant once, and my job was to hit conference things in, and if I didn't, my boss would just lose it. So I felt that right here for every assistant who's ever had to conference people in. And did you hear the flurry of people taking photos once they realize, oh no, he's not on the phone? It was just Trump looks up, and then
no, my favorite thing was when he looked up. That awkward
and then he goes, how are you? How are you? Good?
Pretty big thing. Pretty big thing.
We got buttons. I just was waiting for Spanish, press 1.
So good. So good. And the operator.
Yeah.
Peña Nieto. Peña Nieto.
You've reached movie pose.
Oh, so good. So good. All right, just fun to lighten up the mood.
He hit the wrong speed dial, and it's just a Diet Coke comes flying in.
And a Big Mac.
And a Big Mac.
Which also sounds so good right now.
Ann and I are going to go between here and post-game. We're going to go to In-N-Out, maybe McDonald's. Who knows?
Yes. But in the meantime, we're going to go to break. When we come back, drama involving the Attorney General of Florida. What is Pam Bondi up to? I will fill you in on that and more.
Can we eat in here? Once again, it's me, here at the Streamies. You people have thought that I was here to interview people. Instead, I was here to take it over for myself, my own agenda.
Congratulations on your award. Quick question: who's keeping it?
Well, we have a collective safe deposit box in Peoria, Illinois, that we will be putting it in.
You have to plan ahead.
She's gonna lay like this. You can hang your tank tops on it, and then I can put my coat on it. Or maybe a towel.
I can hold your award. I'd be happy to do it. Okay, good. I'll just hold this real quick. Can you just get this for my mom, just so she has no idea the difference? This year also has been a pretty big year for you politically. You have sat down with, I mean, do you want to just name, Hillary Clinton?
Yes, our next president, hashtag I'm with her. Oh! I'm just going to put that out there.
I already knew that, but I feel like it's powerful now. You just said it. You know?
I mean, come on. I'm actually going to Florida next week and knocking on doors and trying to get all my fans. Make sure the millennials, you go out and you vote. It's very important.
What's next? Just, world domination. Yes. And stuff. Our matching tattoos and yes, exactly. But honestly, what's next is whatever I can do to be a positive light in this world is what I'm going to do. Did you ever think when you started making YouTube videos that you'd be holding an award?
Yes.
You did?
Yeah.
You're the first. Okay. Oh, right. Okay. You're the first person that said other people. They're like.
People always ask me that. Did you think you were gonna have 10 million subscribers? Did you think you were gonna be in a movie and all this stuff? And I say yes. You have to believe in yourself, ignorantly almost, or arrogantly almost, to the point where you have to believe in yourself when no one else does. So obviously, I believed in myself.
Once again, I am here, backstage. Thus far, no one has suspected that it's not really Grace, it's an imposter. Good.
So congratulations on winning Show of the Year. Did you expect this?
I was hoping. I was thinking they were going to be top 3. I thought Good Mythical Morning might take it because they're a great show. They have a great audience. But I'm glad they didn't. Is that okay? I'm sorry.
I'm glad they lost.
I'm glad they lost. I mean, I'm glad I won, but also that they lost because that's the only way they would have won.
Yeah, again, I've watched your videos since I was like a kid. I don't know when I was a kid, but for a while. No, I wasn't gonna say that. I mean, you're not. Okay, but hey, you've been doing good content for that long. That's awesome.
And also, if I'm a dinosaur, what's Jink?
To basketball, something else must be small. I guarantee you there's no problem. I guarantee you.
You said I had small hands. They're not small, Mark. I never heard that one before.
My name is Cassandra Hayes. I've been with TYT for 3 years. I am a video editor and photographer. I edit the main show, Pop Trigger, sometimes Think Tank, and my favorite show, Murder with Friends.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You said Murder with Friends.
Being the main photographer, I get to photograph and sometimes meet some of the celebrities that come through. Susan Sarandon was amazing because she brought her dog Penny. Meeting people like Joss Whedon and Quentin Tarantino has been some of the reasons why I got into filmmaking and photography was like a dream come true.
Hey guys, welcome back to TYT. The TYT lives today are just killing it. And I have some examples. So, the Phoenix says, I think I'm going to name my dog Dog. I think it's a very... elegant name. Believe me. It's so good. It's so good. Okay. Also, Scoodle Moose says, my husband's birthday is today. He's a huge fan of TYT for years. I bought him TYT merch for gifts this year. Anna and Brett, can you guys wish him a happy one? We're watching right now. I wish I knew his name, but happy birthday!
Happy birthday to you.
Yes, I love it. And John Cobalt. Oh, I know you, John! John Cobalt is a fantastic photographer, if it's the right John Cobalt that I'm talking about.
How many John Cobalts could there be? If there's a one John Cobalt, he's eliminated all the other Johns Cobalt.
I follow John Cobalt on Instagram because his photography is so amazing, if it's the same John Cobalt. Anyway,
here's the thing. I take it back. If you find out that there's someone named John Cobalt, you realize it's such a good name. I'm going to go change my name to Johnny Cobalt.
It is a good name, isn't it?
Johnny Cobalt.
Johnny Cobalt.
Johnny Cobalt. I'm working on a small set of detective films, and then it's starring Johnny Cobalt.
By the way, I mentioned John Cobalt because he sent us a super chat. He said, "Hi, Anna and Brett. Brett, you make me laugh without saying or doing anything." That's a compliment.
That's exactly where you want to be. Oh, God.
Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for supporting the show and for sending us those tweets. All right, let's move on to Pam Bondi. Pam Bondi is the Attorney General in the state of Florida, and she is catching a little bit of heat because it turns out that even though she has 4 months left in her position, she is spending her time doing things other than Attorney Generaling. She is auditioning on Fox News for a show, The Five. So Bondi subbed on the talk show not once, not twice, but three times, appearing as a panelist Wednesday through Friday. So just to give you a little taste of what that was like, let's take a look at this clip.
You've got an adorable little girl and Marshmallow taking a walk around the block.
Innocent Maltese.
Or an innocent Maltese and an innocent little girl and a mom who homeschools her kids. Like the best mom in the world they chose to pick on. And the other case with the president, all that it's going to be is in a potential memo for impeachment. So where's the credibility of somebody getting to cross-examine him? It's not. And they're taking what Michael Cohen says as fact. So that's what troubles me with how they're doing this. They're looking at it to see what happened with E-Verify. This guy's been in the country forever, and he murdered a beautiful young girl. From being in a courtroom my entire career, that's who everybody in this country should be focusing on, that victim's parents, her family. Can you imagine what they're going through?
So she's the Attorney General in the state of Florida, 4 months left in her term, and I'm happy that she has taken time out of that job to do what's really important, spread propaganda on Fox News. By the way, as Attorney General, it's a little worrisome that she subscribes to the propaganda on Fox News. You know what I'm saying?
Pam Bondi was one of the many Trump campaign scandals because, it was discovered that as she herself was deciding as Attorney General whether to investigate Trump University, lo and behold, a few days before she had to make her decision, she got a $25,000 check from Donald Trump, and wouldn't you know it, she did not investigate Trump University, or she did not go after them.
Right. Look,
she's in that little group.
Yeah, she's in that group, she's in that world. Even though she is catching heat for this, I actually do think it's a good thing. I would much rather her do the propaganda on Fox News than be in a position of power where she makes those types of decisions.
I just think one thing that Fox News needs more of is blonde women
with brightly colored dresses.
Just extremely bright, strong colored dresses. That's what they don't have enough. They need to. I know. When I saw it, I was like, doesn't she already work? I feel like I've seen her before on Fox News. Oh no, that's Ainsley Stephanie.
Yeah, no, but okay, so you have seen her on Fox News before because she's a regular guest, not a panelist. The panelist thing, her auditioning for Fox News is a new development. But she has been on Fox News quite a bit to get interviewed about whatever's happening in Trump's administration or whatever's happening in the news. So she has been a staple at Fox. But now it appears that she's angling for a job. But again, I'm being completely honest with you. Go ahead, go work at Fox. Why are people upset at her doing this instead of, working as an attorney general? I don't want her as an attorney general.
This next message is to Elizabeth Warren.
Oh.
Elizabeth Warren has just announced her plan to lock she was on Rebel headquarters. Everyone should go watch that interview because it was an amazing interview. Mm-hmm. She said, we want to lock the revolving door when she's introducing her reforms for a new, act. And that revolving door she's talking about is people going from legislation and regulation into this very companies that they were regulating and back and forth and back and forth. But there is a similar revolving door with cable news, where people are in positions of power, then they get out of positions of power, and they go right into their position on the CNN panel or at this Fox News panel. And what I would say is the difference between going into a job at CNN and going into a job at Fox News is you are just as effective a lobbyist/legislator by being on Fox News that morning, because you have a more direct line to the president. Usually he's like, I'll have my meeting in a second, I gotta watch Fox & Friends. Maybe it's N' Friends, I don't know.
Yeah, you make a good point. I mean, this isn't really that unprecedented. It's unprecedented in that you have an attorney general doing it. But I mean, think about what happened with Corey Lewandowski and all these other Trump-affiliated people who immediately got hired by CNN.
I mean, right. I don't know of any... Oh, no, how about this? Mike Huckabee. She should go do that. The happiest I've ever seen Mike Huckabee. When he was like, I'm not going to run for president. He decided not to run for president. He instead decided to keep his show on Fox News.
Yeah.
And I've never seen anyone as happy as when I watched Mike Huckabee play bass with Ted Nugent.
I've never seen that clip. I never want to.
Do yourself a favor and watch him just awkwardly play as they're playing for the octogenarian audience on Fox News Huckabee.
I'm going to see if we can find that clip for the post game. And we can talk about that on the post game. If you're not a member, you can join by going to tytnetwork.com/join.
But they play Cat Scratch Fever, which is so pervy. It's such a pervy song.
What are the lyrics?
Oh God, Cat Scratch Fever.
Look up the lyrics. Yeah, Mike Huckabee. And also, remember, Sarah Palin. Sarah Palin stepped down from her elected official role in Alaska because she said that the legal bills were just becoming too expensive. She didn't want to deal with it anymore. She did a reality show. She was a Fox News contributor. She wrote a book, I think.
So who was this? Sorry,
Sarah Palin.
Oh, Sarah Palin. Yes, exactly. It's just she was governor.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, I don't want to do that. Why? Especially in a Trump world, being on Fox News is the same as being a politician. It is that extra bit of communication know-how, savvy. It's just there were fireside chats back in the day, and Obama would go do an appearance so he could communicate how to sign up for healthcare. Mm-hmm. Trump's calling in the morning to Fox and Friends just to be like, let's blah, blah. Anyways, here is what I have to say are the lyrics of Cat Scratch Fever. I just had them. It would be, it's nothing dangerous, I feel no pain, I've got to change, you know you got it when you're going insane, it makes a grown man crying, won't you make my bed, I make the purr with the stroke of my hand, they know they're getting it from me, and there's an 80-year-old woman in the audience,
yeah, what? But, it appears, based on those lyrics, that he knows a thing or two about clitoral stimulation, which I commend him for. Not many do. Anyway, by the way, speaking of the postgame, I just want to let you guys know that Jank will be joining in for the postgame, and he will be hosting Rebel Headquarters later. And if you are not a member, again, I encourage you to join by going to tytnetwork.com/join.
Boom.
All right. One final story for you all, and then we'll wrap the show. Trump's approval ratings have never been good. I mean, they've been okay when it comes to Republican voters, but they have not been good if you poll the general public. But that never stopped Trump from bragging about how popular he is. In fact, he recently did so through a tweet. So I want to share that tweet with you, and then I want to give you a sense of what the reality is. He tweeted over 90% approval rating for your all-time favorite, I hope, president within the Republican Party, and 52% overall. This, despite all of the made-up stories by the fake news media, trying endlessly to make me look as bad and evil as possible. Look at the real villains, please. Okay. So, we're uncertain which poll he was referring to exactly. However, we have a pretty good idea that he was talking about a Wall Street Journal NBC poll. That poll that was released actually found that Trump has a 44% approval rating. 44% approval rating.
Well, you double it and add 1. It's like when you're converting from degrees Celsius to Fahrenheit. That's how you get a Trump stat.
I'm sure that's the way he was thinking about it. So, no, he does not have a 52% overall approval rating. He has a 44% approval rating. The poll found that 52% of registered voters disapproved of his performance, though.
I know what he was meaning 20 minutes.
No, but, I'm actually jealous that he's able to do that. I'm jealous. Because here's the thing. When you guys criticize me, I do take it to heart. I gotta do better. I take it seriously. I wish I had the ability to take your criticisms. Anna, you sucked at reporting that. So that story was so wrong. You got all the facts wrong. I hate you. Can you imagine if they love the job I'm doing. My reporting's excellent. Can you... Everyone, I'm going to share it on Twitter. TYT audience thinks I'm perfect. Everyone loves me. They're my best friend. I hope. I'm jealous.
I've never thought to be jealous of someone's rampant self-delusion.
But think about it.
Must be nice.
It must be nice. Because here's how people we are, right?
Okay.
I go home, I sit on the couch, I could have done better.
Yes.
I did a horrible job today. Why do I suck so bad? I've accomplished nothing in my life. I'm terrible. That's what my life is. But Trump, who's actually terrible, is nailed it. Every day, all day, every day.
So you don't think there is one moment when he has a little self-reflection as he's sitting on his golden toilet?
No.
Where he's he's doing that. He's eating a Big Mac, drinking a Diet Coke on the toilet. And he just doesn't look and catch his reflection in the warped reflection in his golden toilet paper dispenser and just goes, what's wrong with me?
Do you not remember when photojournalists just did their jobs and took photos of Trump during his events? And he got mad at them because he thought they were purposely making it seem like he had a double chin. You have a double chin. He's surrounded by yes men. He's been handed all this wealth from his father. No one's ever sat him down and told him, no.
I mean,
right? No, you're not attractive. No, your hands are not large. No one's ever really told him the truth about who he is. And that's why when the media reports factual stories about him, he's like, what are these lies? They're not lies. That's the reality. But he's so delusional. And he lives in this weird world where he's so perfect that he just can't accept it. It's just not, he can't separate fact from fiction. It's amazing.
I think he can.
No.
I think he knows it. He just won't unless he absolutely has to. Because there have been times when he's acknowledged, all right, I gotta send or okayed I will read what you wrote for me. Very rarely. And it's when he's gone overboard. Because look at the other option for him. The other option is for him to be reasonable, look at it and go, I guess they're right. You guys are so right. Sorry. And for him, showing that weakness does two things. One, it emboldens the people and perceived weakness. It's not actual weakness. I would argue that it is stronger to acknowledge your faults and, of course, fix them. But in his warped worldview, that is weakness because men are strong, guys eat hamburger. So it's emboldening people and betraying the trust of those blind MAGAists who, as there has been more and more evidence that they should disapprove of Trump, is continued to maintain an approval rating.
His approval rating among Democrats is 10%.
Who are they? Who are you?
I know, but let it sink in that 90% of Republicans approve of him. 90% of Republicans are insane.
So I would argue that there's a large portion of the Republican Party who is more likely to be like, I'm only following this dude for one thing, and I got it. It was a huge tax cut. And that's it. I really don't care if everyone else lives or die. I read Ayn Rand, and I'm not supposed to, care about other people. It's my job. I have the fountainhead tattooed on my back, which is like meta, because it's like your back is holding up your back. Maybe it's Atlas Shrugged. Anyways, who are the 10% of Democrats? Do you know who it is?
Who?
It's the people who are like, there's good in everyone.
Dianne Feinstein, maybe?
Maybe Dianne.
Give him a chance.
It could be that, but it could also just be people who are like, if I get mad at one person, I'm going to lose it. It's just like those really nice people who are like, I'm holding it together still. I have a mantra, and has faith in humanity.
Maybe. Oh, devastating. All right, Brett Ehrlich, where can people find your stuff?
Happy half hour. Full stuff.
It's a good way of, purging yourself of all the bad news, because you give them what? You give them good news and
good booze.
Yeah, all right. And for everyone else, stick around because Jank will be hosting Rebel Headquarters very soon, and we will have a post game, and it'll be fantastic. Love you guys. We'll see you in a little bit.
Welcome to Rebel Headquarters. We've got an important show for you guys coming up 70 days before the general election, and we still have primaries left to go. Rhode Island, Delaware, and some other really important states. So stay with us through all the primary coverages. We've got one coming up tomorrow night, and then we're going to cover Rhode Island in a very different, interesting way when we get to that race. But speaking of Rhode Island, I've got a guest for you guys on that right now. Joining me now is Aaron Regenberg. He is running for lieutenant governor in Rhode Island, and there are several strange things about his race that I want to ask him about. Aaron, first, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So, Aaron, let me start with strange situation number one. You're running against the Democratic incumbent. You've got the backing of Just Democrats, Indivisible, Our Revolution Rhode Island, National Our Revolution, Working Families Party. So far, not strange. You're very progressive. You're young. You're an upstart. You've got all these progressive groups behind you. But what's strange is you also have Planned Parenthood, Now, Sierra Club, Clean Water Action, etc., 350.org. And those are not groups I normally see jumping into a race against the Democratic incumbent. So what in the world's going on over there?
Well, in Rhode Island, we're sometimes a special situation. You know, Rhode Island is one of the most democratic states in the country. And so we can really be a model for the kind of bold, positive, progressive agenda and what that can accomplish. The problem is that even though in our state house machine, everyone's a Democrat, we've got Democratic supermajorities in both the House and the Senate, it really doesn't mean anything. You know, we've got Democratic leaders at the highest levels of our party who are, have an A+ from the NRA, have an A+ from Right to Life, are anti-union, don't believe in climate change. And so the battle here in our state is, it's sort of fundamentally, are we going to have leadership that's actually going to stand up for our core values, who's going to push for that bold progressive agenda? I've been proud to introduce legislation every year that I've been a state rep to create a universal Medicare for all system at the state level, to push for a living wage, to push for bold climate action. But the battle is also just to get our state Democrats to stand up for the most basic Democratic values and agendas, to fight to protect a woman's right to choose, to fight for common sense gun violence legislation. So really the lines here couldn't be clearer, and what we're trying to do in this campaign is really send a message to that conservative state house machine that Rhode Islanders want to see some real change. They want Democratic leaders that are actually going to stand up for working families. And there's a disconnect there between what everyday Rhode Islanders want to see and what our current sort of old boys club in the state house has been putting forward.
So let's talk about your particular incumbent in the first place. Dan McKee, he's the lieutenant governor. He's a Democrat, but he must be awfully conservative for Now and Planned Parenthood and Sierra Club to jump in on this one. So what makes him that conservative as a Democrat?
So there are some really, really clear contrasts in this race. I really fought to pass protections for working families in our state. I led the fight to get paid sick days passed, to get the first increase for the minimum wage passed. My opponent, Dan McKee, he sided with corporate lobbyists against all of those measures. He's received hundreds of thousands of dollars in spending from, out-of-state millionaires and billionaires like Alice Walton of the Walmart family, like Jonathan Sackler of Purdue Pharma. Those are the folks behind the OxyContin crisis. Like just this week, two Wall Street millionaires dropped $75,000 into a super PAC to support my opponent, which in Rhode Island, that's a lot of money. So the difference is, I would say this race isn't just between, someone who's been really pushing for that bolder progressive agenda and a mainstream Democrat. It's between, that bold agenda and really a conservative, sort of old school part of that machine that we have in our state house that needs to go. Because when I talk to everyday Rhode Islanders, overwhelmingly, they want to see their state leaders fight for universal health care as a right for everyone. They believe that no one who's working full-time should live in poverty. They believe that we should be taking bold climate action to really take clean energy in our state to scale. We've just got this bubble in our state house where even though they're Democrats, they're listening to corporate lobbyists and entrenched corporate interests. And I think that with this election cycle, we really have the opportunity to shake that up, to send a message to all those politicians that we're ready for change. And ultimately, I think Rhode Island can be, a model for what that bolder agenda can look like.
Yeah, so I'm telling you, Aaron's coalition of the willing, if you will, it's not a great analogy, but is fascinating. You've got almost all the unions on your side, which progressive upstarts don't normally have. But you were on Bernie Sanders, you were delegate for him in 2016, so it's a really unique combination. And speaking of which, I mentioned you were 28 years old, but you're already a state representative for District 4 over there, and you got there in 2014. If I'm doing the math right, you won when you were 24 years old. So what possessed you to get into politics as a 24-year-old in the first place?
Well, I got involved in politics through community organizing. I founded a citywide nonprofit in Providence called the Providence Student Union that helps young people come together and really organize and fight for the changes that they want to see in their public schools. And so I saw through that work that, people can come together and win real change, and how much better policy outcomes are when the folks that are impacted by them actually have a seat at the table. And so that led me to wanting to make sure that there were folks at that table that were going to bring in those new voices. So that's what I've tried to do as a rep. I think that when you talk about the coalition we've been able to build in this campaign, my approach has always been, I want to win, and you win by building the kind of coalitions that have enough political capital to actually get things over the finish line. And so it's been working to build relationships with labor, getting out to every picket line, showing that you're going to stand up for them, so that when you've got a policy like, trying to pass paid sick time, that might not impact as many of their workers, but they'll come there to the table to fight for the broader, world of working families in our state.
Yeah, actually, that's what I wanted to ask you about next. So I'm glad you mentioned that. You led the fight to guarantee paid sick days in Rhode Island. So talk to me about how that went down. Was there originally skepticism? It's not practical. We can't afford it, etc. And how did you guys get past it and get it passed?
So there were a lot of powerful corporate interests that did everything they could to fight against this. And so the approach for me was, number one, build that diverse coalition. So make sure that we had labor, make sure that we had women's groups, make sure that we had domestic violence groups, because the legislation also includes sick time for folks going through those really difficult periods. And number two, ultimately, I think on all of these fights, it's about making sure that politicians are more scared of us, of regular people who are fighting for the protections that they need and deserve, than they are scared of the corporate lobbyists and attorneys. So we knocked on doors. We had literally close to 10,000 Rhode Islanders make phone calls and write their legislators in specific targeted districts to show the folks that, again, they're mostly hearing from corporate lobbyists, so they're hearing this is bad, this is going to kill business. Of course, we know that actually everyone benefits when workers are coming in healthy, when they're not getting their coworkers sick, when they're not getting their customers sick. But they knew that even though they were hearing that from the powerful interests, their actual voters, the people in their communities, were calling them up and saying, "Are you kidding me? You don't support this most basic right of letting me not have to send my kid to school sick, of not making me choose between my job and caring for my elderly loved one when they have a spill." So in all of these fights, I think whether we're talking about Medicare for all, whether we're talking about the actual climate action we need to get to 100% clean energy, it's going to come out of building power in our communities. We know that they're always going to have the money, but we've got people, and when you organize them, when you bring them together, we can do really good things. And to me, that's what the Lieutenant Governor's office in Rhode Island can be. I'm so glad to be on the show, because the phrase that I use about what the Lieutenant Governor's office can be is a little rebel base camp, a rebel headquarters right in our state house that our movement can use to organize out of, that we can use to support the good folks who are in the General Assembly, to have some more staffing, some more capacity, to build those bigger coalitions we need to get more ambitious policy change passed.
Now you call the Lieutenant Governor's office in Rhode Island Rebel headquarters, and I will have my lawyers contact you immediately. No, we're kidding around. Look, there's a lot of reasons to like you, Aaron. You're a Justice Democrat. You're a young progressive fighting for the voters, etc. But now I got another one, because you do hand motions like my dad. 10,000 people called in. Okay, I wouldn't have known if you hadn't done this.
She was always telling me, you gotta stop using your hands so much, so I'm trying.
No. Do whatever's natural. Don't listen to your team. Okay, so anyway, one more thing, at least. You got an F from a group that I don't normally see that on someone's resume. Hey, I got an F. Okay, it was from the NRA. So how'd you earn that F?
So every year that I've been elected office, I've introduced legislation to ban high-capacity magazines in our state. I helped pass legislation to disarm domestic abusers. This is one of those issues where the vast majority of Rhode Islanders support common sense gun violence prevention. And yet, our Speaker of the House, again, in a Democratic supermajority chamber, has an A+ from the NRA. So the gun lobby, even though you think Rhode Island is very blue, the gun lobby here is very powerful. And so what I'm trying to do in our campaign is show that even though you have an F from the NRA, you can still win statewide. And so I think if we're successful, it's going to send a message to other elected officials. It's going to show them that they don't have to be beholden to these corporate interests. My campaign is not taking a dime from corporate PACs. We're not taking a dime from the oil and gas industry, from drug manufacturers, from the gun lobby. We're not going to have the out-of-state millionaires and billionaires like my opponent has. But I think that we can win without that. We can win with actual grassroots organizing, and we're gonna let other elected officials in our state know that that's the way that they can have success as well.
Yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't take it to Walmart and Purdue Pharma are looking out for the best interests of Rhode Island, but or perhaps it's a great point. We're out of time. I want to make sure everybody's got your website. AaronRegenberg.com, AaronRegenberg.com. Links will be down below if you're watching later on YouTube or Facebook. Representative Regenberg, thank you so much for joining us for fighting.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We'll come back. A unique group that I think you're going to love hearing about. So come right back.
I guarantee you.
Turks, as I often do. Rebel headquarters, in this case, or the Young Turks Network, obviously. All right, let's go to our next guest here. Andy Friedman is joining me. He is the co-founder of Miles for Migrants. It's an amazing group. Andy, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Good to have you. All right, so first, for those that don't know, what does Miles for Migrants do?
Miles for Migrants is an organization that was incorporated in the fall of 2016. Our mission is pretty simple. We're all about reuniting families, and how we do that is by taking donations for frequent flyer miles, credit card points, and cash, and using those donations to cover the cost of airfare in cases of legal reunification, mainly for refugees and immigrants across the world.
So I'm surprised Trump hasn't tweeted about you guys yet. These are the guys shipping in the immigrants, etc. But so, in all seriousness, let's talk about who does it apply to most? Who do you guys?
Yeah. So historically, since we founded about 2 years ago, we've been very focused on the international refugee crisis. In 2016 alone, there were 66 million people across the world that were displaced from their homes. And if you think about it on a global perspective, there's 50 million children who are impacted by this crisis. So our mission has been one about helping whoever we can. How we do that is we've been able to find amazing partners, mainly refugee aid organizations, who identify cases, and we insert ourselves to the place where they are legally granted asylum or a visa status to move to a new country. All they need is a flight. Often those flights can be thousands of dollars. And where we see the opportunity is through our donor base. Credit card points and miles that they've been collecting, often sitting on a shelf, can be used in something that would have put that family in financial debt and unable to be economic contributors to their new economy.
So it's not just the U.S., right? It's across the world?
Yeah, totally. And so prior to a few weeks ago, when we came on the radar on the U.S. stage, our mission had been primarily focused on the U.S. Not intentionally. We're a U.S.-based organization. The founding team all lives here. We're all Americans. It's been more of a challenge to find aid organizations locally who were able to identify the cases where we could support, where we were finding partners in Europe primarily who could more easily identify people we could help. When things started happening with the family separations in the U.S., we really couldn't ignore wanting to be involved. And then thanks to a tweet that honestly just went viral, having nothing to do with our own organization, we benefited from that over the last 3 weeks to the tune of 37 million miles have been donated to our organization in that period of time.
In just the last how many weeks?
3 weeks.
Wow. How many have you donated before?
Prior to that, we were sitting on about 3 million in donated miles, which is not nothing, but that is the true definition of something with just sparking. And I think we attribute that really to what's underlying our movement, and it's the idea that people are looking to make an impact. In this case, people see families being torn apart at a border, and they want to do something, anything. So when Beth Walensky, a University of Michigan law professor, tweeted about her experience donating miles to help reunite a family, I think it just struck a chord with people, honestly, across the world who have been donating to us for the last few weeks.
Man, just a random professor in Michigan tweeted about it and it took off like that?
Yeah, and someone we don't even know. We're now social media friends, which is great, but it did. And I think it was liked something about 150,000 times and retweeted, thousands of times, and we're just thankful that we now have the ability. And so just to kind of put that in terms of what we can do, so that gives us the ability to fly at least 1,850 people. One of the real challenges we have is like miles and credit card points are one part of the side. If you or any of your viewers have ever booked a flight on Delta using SkyMiles, you're asked to pay taxes and fees at the end of that. So with these types of numbers, we do have kind of financial needs as well. So that's something where we're looking to get support for. But we're really excited about bringing this opportunity to our partners and honestly reuniting hundreds and hundreds of families.
So you need people to donate their miles, but you also need money to be able to pay the taxes and fees.
Yeah, just to kind of, last time you booked a flight, you probably asked at the end to pay the $10 to $100 in tax and fees. So
On our average, it's about $50 per ticket. So with those types of numbers, we're closing at about $100,000 that we're going to need to put against the flights that we book.
Andy, did I see right that you're all volunteers? Is that right?
Yes, you are catching me after my day job and my evening job of putting my 3-year-old and 1-year-old down, and now it's back to Miles for Migrants. So right after I finish with you here, we have a board call later tonight. So the other interesting thing about us as a group is we've only met in person once. Seth, one of the co-founders, lives in New Orleans. Nick, another co-founder, lives in New Jersey, and Ryan, the fourth original co-founder, is also in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge. And it's amazing that we found each other on the internet, kind of all came together over the shared vision of this being an opportunity, and that's how we started.
And I want to talk about one person in particular. Then I want to come back and talk about the kids who were separated at the border.
Sure.
So recently, Turk Al-Suleiman wrote a piece talking about how you guys helped him. So he was from Aleppo, Syria. He was 13 years old when he basically ran from there, ran for his life, in essence. And he happened to go to Belgium. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah. So we have an amazing partner in Belgium, Caritas International, who was able to bring us this case. In Turks' cases, like many of the stories we hear, and that's honestly why we do it. If you were to talk to any one of the founders of this organization, why we spend our nights and weekends, kind of putting in the effort, it's to wake up the next morning after we booked a flight and get a text with a picture of that moment of someone like Tarek is being reunited with his family. Often these are cases where a father has been separated from their wife and children for years. There's been several cases where that father left a pregnant wife and has not even met the child. So fast forward 3-4 years later, that's the first time they're meeting, and it's pretty incredible to be a part of that moment of reunification.
So in that case, what really got me was that he needed to bring his family back once they actually won permission from Belgium to bring them in.
That's right.
And he had come with his uncle. They barely made it to Belgium in the first place. And he was worried, not only because he's 13 and hadn't seen his parents and his family all that time, and that was already heartbreaking in a lot of ways, and it took a 9-month process once he got to Belgium, let alone how long it took to get to Belgium. But most importantly, they're in Syria. They could die any day, especially in Aleppo, which is an absolute war zone. That's not an analogy. That's literal. It's a war zone. And so every day is a heart attack on whether your parents are going to die and your family's going to die. And so the fact that you guys could get them over as right away, instead of them having to try to somehow raise money to fly them over, and then at the end he thanked one of the people who was involved, Kevin Ma. So how does that work? How does he know Kevin's the one who gave the miles for his family and maybe saved their lives?
Yeah, that's it's one of the beautiful things about kind of the way we have to do this. Now, we would love a world where all of the airlines were able to allow us access to pool and collect donations from lots of different people and use those on the back end. For the major airlines, United, Delta, American, primarily, that's not the way it works today. What that does provide is an opportunity, like you just described with Kevin, where the donor is actually pledging the miles to support a specific family. So in Kevin's case, he was intimately involved in booking the flight for Tarek's family, and that creates a really intimate bond. Most cases, not all, involve, after the reunification, a letter being written from the family specifically to the person who donated the miles that allowed them to fly. And that's a relationship that can last years, and obviously is really emotional. And unlike being able to give money to an organization that you don't always know where it goes, in our case, you know exactly the person that you're helping. And I think that has something to do with the fact that 37 million miles were donated to us in such a short amount of time. Is people see that as a meaningful way to make impact and know exactly where it's going.
Yeah, I mean, to just donate your miles and know that you might have saved a family's life, that's amazing. I want to make sure everybody's got the website before we do anything else. milesformigrants.org. That's the number 4, milesformigrants.org. And obviously donate milesformigrants.org/donate. Please participate. And then I want to go back to the family separated at the border. I literally don't know if this applies to you guys, so that's why I'm asking. So I know that there were, unfortunately, hundreds of cases where they separated the kids, then they deported the family members and forgot that the kids were left behind. So could that apply, whether flying the parents back up or flying the kids to the parents in this case, or no?
Yeah, every case is a little bit different. So, what has happened is there's been amazing organizations that have stepped up and helped support many of the families that were separated. Races, who raised about $20 million. Facebook donations has been involved in that. The ACLU has been fighting the fight. Forward.us has been very involved. So incredible organizations have been helping. And to your point, what's left is some of these more challenging cases where a family has been deported or a parent is still in a detention center and their child is somewhere else. And once they get bond, they have to fly immediately. We are being pulled into some of those organizations. We're working with a number of partners who are on the ground, basically taking the intake when these families get out and bringing those cases to us to help support. We are well aware that much of the attention we've received over the last few weeks and many of the donations were intended for that purpose, for helping to kind of help the families here in the U.S. that have been separated, and we're working our hardest to do that. So far, it's been a handful of cases that we've been able to support with partner organizations, including Immigrant Families Together and many others. But we continue to do that work, and actually, later this evening we'll be speaking about a couple cases that just came to us that do involve families where a parent's been deported and the child's still here, and how do we get the child back to the country where their parents now are, with a chaperone, what have you, to make that reunification happening. So that's the work that we're doing and trying to put all these new miles to use.
All right, Andy Friedman, milesformigrants.org. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. Really appreciate it. Have a good night.
You too. Okay, we got the post game coming up for you guys. Brett and Anna are going to come back, and we're going to do a post game together. In order to watch that, become a member.